Invocation led by Reverend Dina Ferguson. You guys could please rise. Everyone please rise. Thank you.
Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we come before you this evening and we ask your guidance, wisdom, support, and presence at this meeting of the El Segundo City Council. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion and to discern what is truly important. Open our ears and our hearts to hear our fellow council members and all those who come to address this council. Help us to speak clearly and honestly as we offer our own thoughts and wisdom on each topic. Guide us in our deliberations and give us the courage to make the right decisions. Fill us with your grace, Lord God. Bless us and all of the people we serve, and continue to remind us that all we do here this evening is in service to others. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Councilmember Perstuck, please lead us to the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We have a couple presentations to start, and I don't believe Southern Cal Edison is here yet. We will be getting an update from them on some of their capital improvement. Are they here? Okay, please come on up. Thank you. Yes. You guys wouldn't mind taking the podium and then introducing yourselves. Thank you.
So, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, just by way of a lead-in, earlier this year, last year, we were having more issues, thankfully, than we've had this year with outages. And Council asked for a presentation last year from SCE on what was causing some of those outages, what the city and SCE could potentially do collaboratively to address the outage issues going forward. And Mayor Pro Tem Ken Berkman, our Public Works Director, and I met with Connie Turner and her staff over at SCE and developed some criteria for identifying those areas of town where we think we're having the most issues, some of our major businesses that are being affected or had been affected by outages, and developed a strategy, asked SCE to develop a strategy to address those. And to bring us some information about what they're doing to address outages here in El Segundo. So I think I've seen part of this presentation. I think you're going to cover some of the infrastructure projects, maintenance projects that SCE is undertaking going forward. So, sir, if you can introduce yourself.
Yeah. Tony Green, I'm the district manager of South Bay. We also have Ryan Barfield. He's a senior planner. We're going to be going over some of the circuit reliability review for El Segundo. As it stated up there, basically, we're here to provide safe reliability and affordable power. There's about a $12 billion investment into the power grid between 2015 2017 with the goal of increasing power reliability. That's overall for Edison. But as we go through the presentation, we'll talk more about what investment is actually in the El Segundo area. Understanding your reliability report, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but we pretty much grade it by looking at SAIDI and SAIFI. SAIDI is pretty much the duration of an outage, and SAIFI is basically the frequency of an outage. It's stated right there, the definition. SAIFI, the number of times the average customer is interrupted. SAIDI is the cumulative amount of time the average customer is interrupted. And we also look at MAFI as a momentary outage, is how many times the average customer is interrupted by momentary outages. So as you can see here, in the South Bay District, we have numerous amount of cities. El Segundo is also one of the cities. Can't really read this, but basically it's showing that since 2012 to 2016, we collect data by city to verify that is each city actually within the norms in terms of outages. I'll go into detail as we go. Overview of El Segundo. There are 21 circuits that serve El Segundo, and as you can see, the butane, which we'll talk a little bit about that before the end of this presentation. But it's a 16 kV circuit, and it's about 4,200 customers on it. And you also have the Sandra, which is 16 kV, it's 4,300. But it basically tells you how many customers on each circuit. As you can see here in the blue, you have El Segundo compared to SCE system-wide, both Sadie, Safi, and Mayfi. We'll concentrate more on the 2016. You can see that 148.9 last year, as in terms of 2016, compared to system-wide. You can see it's a little higher than normal. Ryan will be talking to you a little bit more in another presentation about what we're doing to reduce that number. Same as Safi, you can see 1.6 compared to 1.1. So over the years, you can see El Segundo has been larger than the average on the frequency of outages. That's one of the reasons why we're here to speak to you guys about all the infrastructure that we're going to improve the area. This basically shows that majority of the issues in El Segundo are equipment failure issues. It shows there's about 66% of it, and we have infrastructure to increase, actually reduce that over the next 2 years. It's just continued slides that's showing some of the same stuff. This is a footprint of the El Segundo area, which also spells out by color code which circuits are with each area. Ryan will go into a little bit more detail on the butane, which is one of the main circuits we're working on right now. Those are backup slides. We're going to actually hand this off to Ryan. He'll go into detail a little bit about the butane circuit. When you load it, if you can go to slide 5.
But just for context, that we keep speaking about the butane circuit. That serves about the western half of the residential portion of town. It's got a lot of customers, also the older part of town. And that was one of the circuits that was, I think, less reliable and was affecting more people back in 2016.
Would you mind speaking to the mic? Sorry. Everything's recorded. Sorry.
As he load this, it's basically going to show all of the circuitry that we're going to be adding for 2017, and also more work that's going to be going on. We're going to go into detail about some of your streets that are going to be affected. That's kind of why we want to make sure you get the latest update, because we're going to have construction going on from like October, I think, to about the mid-December.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, like Tony mentioned, my name is Ryan Barfield, one of the senior planners with the South Bay District. One of the things that we wanted to talk about was what are we doing moving forward to help with the grid that we currently have in El Segundo. This is just an overview of the SCE electrical system overview. For distribution-wise, shows that we have over 90,000 overhead and underground line miles, 755 substations, 4,500 circuits, over 700,000 overhead and underground transformers, over 1.3 million wood poles, and over 11,000 circuit breakers. So South Bay communities, Edison is committed to spending $300 million from 2017 to 2019 in the South Bay communities alone. Tony went over before the cities that are going to be affected by that are going to be increased reliability based on the work that we do and the money that we're spending. So what Edison does in terms of equipment, we inspect all of our overhead equipment. We have a 7-year cycle for all of our overhead equipment. And our underground equipment, has a 3 to 5 year cycle of when they're inspected. Inspections can result in replacement, but they're also making sure that everything is operational as it should be. As for the butane circuit, we had some interruption over the last year in the butane. Currently, right now, our department is in the process of designing a work order that will replace 15 miles of conductor. Essentially, it's going to be the whole circuit that's going to get reconductored and upgrade. There is another work order that is already in flight. It is approved. It is slated for 2018, and that will install 20. It'll have 20 locations that we'll be installing branch line fusing. What that does and what that'll help with is limiting some of the outages that we have. We're also going to be installing in 5 locations fault indicators, which is going to help our troublemen to identify the fault quicker, as well as we're replacing 9 switches. The switches that we're going to be replacing, that'll help to make them either automated or be able to operate them quicker. So then we're also going to be able to bring the load up faster. The council also, I believe what Connie had communicated to us was that they wanted to know some of the major customers in the city and how they're doing in terms of their reliability. So we've listed here, I believe there was 9 of them. Starting with Raytheon. Raytheon has a 66 kV feed, so they actually have their own customer sub. So they they control that, as well as Boeing and Northrop Grumman. Number 4 here, DirecTV. They're served off the Liberator 16 kV. That circuit has 91 customers on it. So it is a very small circuit, but it's also very reliable. When we look at our SAIDI and our safety numbers for the duration of the outage and the frequency of the outage, like I said earlier, we have 4,500 circuits. So their rank right now is 3,605 for safety, 3,406 for SAIDI. So they're ranked pretty good there. We have 7 circuit ties, which allows us to switch between circuits and pick up load on another circuit if need be. And all of the main line and the tap lines are accordance to our guidelines. So the circuit itself looks pretty good. Moving on to aerospace. Aerospace is served from the Penguin 16 kV, and they have emergency gear for a second circuit, which is the gear line 16 kV. Their circuit, the Penguin, again has 5 circuit ties, has 455 customers on it, mostly residential customers other than the aerospace. Their SAIDI and the safety rankings are in the low 3,000s. So again, it's a well-performing circuit for that company. The LA Air Force Base is fed as a primary circuit from the CBAS 16 kV, and it has a backup circuit of the gear line as well. As for the CBAS, again, ranks well in the SAIDI and the safety numbers. Has 34 customers on it. They appear to be all commercial. 4 circuit ties. Doesn't have any overhead tap lines. It's mostly, I believe, an underground circuit. Aerospace is next. It's on its circuit is ranking at 4,300. So in terms of 4,500 customers, 4,500 circuits, it ranks pretty high. It has 26 customers, appear to be all commercial. It's going to be mostly underground. I don't believe there's any overhead on this circuit at all. 4 circuit ties to tie into other circuits as well to pick up load. Chevron has its own 66 kV feed. And then Accenture is the Minnow 16 kV. Their rankings, again, they rank pretty well with the SAIDI and the safety numbers. 71 customers on the circuit, all commercial. They have 5 circuit ties to other circuits as well. So in terms of performance, they're doing pretty well as well here. Tony, I believe you wanted to speak on the Chevron project.
Before we move on to the Chevron project, I want to state that you notice that a lot of circuits had minimum amount of commercial customers on it. We deliberately do that on purpose so that these customers, because of their revenue of money, we want to make sure that whenever they're down, we have multiple ways of keeping them their load up. But also, we want to make sure that we reduce their amount of outages. Later on, he'll talk a little bit about our process for outages. Very important for you guys to know that we work with the customers whenever we do have to have outages. We typically try to have them on Friday night or the weekends when there's no one working. So we work closely with the customers because most of their work is Monday through Friday. It's important that they're up at all times.
Tony, can I ask you one question?
Yes.
About a year ago, I got feedback from one of the aerospace companies listed here that it appears to have their own substation, that they were having significant outages. So how would that occur? They have their substation. I don't understand the specifics. Maybe you do, Mike. But I'd be under the impression that if you have your own customer substation, you're less likely to have interruptions in service. Is that not an accurate assumption?
I'll let him speak on it.
With the customer having its own substation or having a 66 or a transmission feed, they should be less likely to have those outages. We would need to look and see if it was maybe something with their transmission feed of the 66 kV, or maybe it was something on their side, equipment on their side that failed. If you give us information or put us in touch with the customer that you're talking to or speaking with, we can definitely look into that.
But these larger customers have their own account rep too? to deal with?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
We have a whole division for that.
Connie Turner, if you guys give us what circuit it is, we can find out. We keep track, go like 5-7 years back on what outages we had, because it does make a difference whether it was a transmission outage, distribution outage, and that's why he stated that. Okay. So in terms of Chevron, this is a pretty big project that we have a planner by the name of Yvonne March, and she's not here today, but I'm going to speak on it for her. It's a huge project for Chevron. As you guys can see, there's about 11 structures that's going to be removed. There's also going to be installed about 9 double circuits for TSP, and these TSPs will aesthetically match the 11 existing TSP structures that's being replaced. These structures also support the 220 kV transmission circuit that, as you can see, Chevron Main, El Segundo, and Chevron Main, El Nido 220 kV circuit. It's a pretty big project. Also, in terms of the project, will be located with Chevron boundaries. There's 8 structures, 7 new TSP, 3 structures to remove outside of Chevron refinery near the Point Shopping Center, 2 TSP installed outside of Chevron refinery. And as in terms of traffic that will be impacted, that's kind of what I spoke about earlier. We're flexible on this. It's important for us to tell you about this information so that your city will know ahead of time. You're going to have Sepulveda Road and the Rosecrans from October 23rd through November 3rd. Also from November 6th through November 15th on Vista Del Mar. That's going to also be in construction from, say, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can also see on Vista Del Mar from January 26th in 2018 to February 1st, 2018 from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. We're flexible on this. We just bring it up front to let you guys know that at some point we have to work with you on the time of the day and the time frame of the outages, but that's why we want to make sure you guys know that it will interrupt a little bit of traffic in the city.
Tony, the Vista Del Mar portion, is that just west of the Chevron refinery on Vista Del Mar?
Yes.
Okay. So we have some significant traffic issues right now that
Okay.
we might want to coordinate on, or at least get the word out there.
Tell you what I could do. I'll take an action item. Connie and I will work with you guys and give you the details. You guys are familiar with traffic control maps. It gives you the details on exactly where we're going to be. So I'll work with you to make sure you guys get that so you can figure out exactly how the traffic's going to be in that area.
Are those total road closures for those time periods you're looking at, or?
No, it's not total traffic. Usually it's certain lanes and stuff, and it depends on where we're working. Okay? Repair outages process. I'm going to have Ryan speak on this. It's very important for you guys to know that there's a detailed process behind how we repair for outages.
Just some of the causes of repair outages. Car hit poles that we've had. We have fires, contamination flashovers. That's usually birds or other animals as well. Heavy rain, flooding vaults, are washing out poles. Overloaded equipment during storms. We experienced some of that in the recent heat storms. Vandalism or theft. Just some of the outages or some of the causes of the outages. The outage process, customers can report an outage through SCE's Customer Contact Center, or they can go online at sce.com, or they can use a mobile application that is available for them. Outage information is continually processed and updated in SCE's Outage and Customer Information System. I'll touch on this in the next couple of slides here, is really kind of where you can find online or through the app when we're estimating that the load is going to be back up for a particular outage. Customers receive automated notifications and updates, including restoration information. Again, they can sign up for this to receive text messages or emails. Current maintenance and repair outage information is always available on SCE.com or SCE's mobile application. The maintenance outage process. So maintenance outage are entered into SCE's outage management system, usually 13 days before the outage. Maintenance outage postcards or distribution to impacted customers are mailed out or delivered 3 to 8 days in advance of the outage. Customers also receive automated notifications 7 to 11 days if they sign up for them via email, text, or automated phone calls. Cities and counties receive an email containing information regarding all the maintenance outage within the geographical boundaries scheduled for the following week, which that's normally some of our schedulers that will get in contact with the city just to let them know where we're going to be based on the permits that we've received. Outage information tools, these are some of the things that I was mentioning we touch on. On your right here is the mailer that would normally go out to customers. On the left normally is going to be like a door hanger that we could maybe hand deliver if they don't get out in time for the mail. And then you have an email sample as well. And then you have the text messages right in the middle there. This is the outage alerts that you can go online at sce.com. You can log in with your ID and your password, and you can customize how you want to receive any outages based on your account. This is one of the outage maps that I talked about that you can see online to see these updates. On the right-hand side here, you can see when it was last updated, how many customers are affected by it. You can get an idea of what the cause is and if we have crews currently working on it at that time. And our doc who dispatches our crews out there will actually be able to update this as the crews update them with information on when the outage is going to be complete. As well, I talked about the mobile app. The mobile app that we have can help you with reports on the power outages, streetlight. You can report a streetlight outage. You can search by zip code of what the current outages are, the start time for the outages, the estimation of the restoration time. For anybody that has this currently, it's a great tool to have. If you're tech savvy with your phone, it's something that's really nice to have for your account. I believe that's the we contact to report an outage. This is our 24-hour call center that you can report an outage to. They'll essentially put together a trouble ticket that will send our crews out there to take a look at it and assess the situation to see if there's anything that needs to be done. That concludes our presentation.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. A couple questions. Do you have any, Carol, Mike, Dr. Brand?
Earlier on in the report, it listed potential causes of outages, and one of the phrases that was used was an act of nature. What is the definition of that?
Your act of nature would be the wind, the rain. We've experienced with the wind sometimes is that it could bring down trees that'll essentially contact our primary lines and cause an outage. It could also bring down trees that'll bring poles down as well. So we're mostly looking at a lot of the weather. The heat plays a factor in it. Recently, over the Labor Day weekend, we had quite a bit of heat, and that definitely played a factor in some of our outages that we had.
What about things like squirrels? Is that an act of nature?
Yeah, that would be considered the animal squirrels getting across the lines. It happens more than people would think.
Crows.
But yeah, they get across there. We do put up on any of our new installation, we put up what's called bird guards. The bird guards will cover any lines that are too close to one another. So if you've got, say for example, if you've got 3 primary lines for our 16 kV, we put a bird guard in the middle. So that way when a bird gets up there, the bird spreads its wings to take off. It doesn't hit 2 different lines because they should be about 4 feet apart. So it doesn't hit 2 lines and then cause an outage.
Is that it, Dr. Brown? Well, thank you. The butane line, I know was, I'm glad to see that get moved up on the priority list. I think, as you already stated, most of our residents are on that circuit, and it was also the cause for a lot of outages about a year and a half ago. We had quite a few residents that experienced outages, had equipment fail as a result. To that end, could you touch on the process for once there is an outage, if something is damaged in your house, the process about going through a claim?
Correct. We have a claims department that they could contact the claims department to start a claim. Then they would be contacted by one of our claims representatives and fill out any sort of necessary paperwork for that.
And that's online?
Absolutely, yes. And we
Okay.
can get you Connie or myself can send you also the number and the contact information for the claim.
Okay, well, hopefully we don't have any outages in the near future. We'll have to avoid that. But again, I want to thank you. I know we have no jurisdiction over Edison, so we appreciate you cooperating. They had if I remember correctly, there was a very extensive list of capital improvements that they wanted to undertake, and some of ours weren't necessarily at the top of the list. So thank you for moving those up and making them a priority.
Absolutely.
Anything else, Council?
No, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, on to some exciting news. We have a proclamation regarding the fair on Richmond Street, and I think we'll have a photo opportunity after that. Mr. Dugan.
Yes, the Fair on Richmond Street is proudly produced and organized by the El Segundo Kiwanis Club as a fundraiser for local scholarships, school funding, and projects for the youth of El Segundo. And the Fair on Richmond Street provides El Segundo school student groups, civic clubs, and nonprofit organizations an opportunity to promote their associations and to raise funds for their school and community projects through the sale of snacks, arts and crafts, and other items. And the Fair on Richmond Street affords people from other communities the opportunity to discover the hometown atmosphere of downtown El Segundo while experiencing wholesome family entertainment at its finest. And whereas the City Council recognizes the merits of the Fair on Richmond Street and commends the El Segundo Kiwanis Club for continuing to carry on this traditional El Segundo event, which has become a celebration of community, now therefore the mayor and the members of the City Council of the City of El Segundo, California, hereby proclaim the 2017 the Fair on Richmond Street from 9 o'clock a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. this Saturday, September 23rd, and invite the community to give generous support to all the groups, organizations, merchants, and volunteers participating in the fair. And on behalf of the best service organization in town, that would be Kiwanis. Yeah, she's not here. So.
Right, she's not here tonight.
Mayor who? Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Accepting this proclamation is the president of our club, George Funk, and the chairman of the Fair on Richmond Street, Mr. Barry Gribbin. So guys.
Come on up. You want to say a few words before? Let's do a photo first.
Photo op, yeah. Photo op.
Well, I want to thank the council for that proclamation. We're really excited about this event that's coming up this Saturday. As you know, this is one of our major fundraisers, and we in the Kiwanis Club work really hard to provide funds for the children in our community, mostly by working through the schools and especially with the Ed Foundation. And we have a lot of exciting events planned for this Saturday. Every year this event gets bigger, and it's one of the more enjoyable things we do as a club. It's really a lot of fun for us. And I want to thank everyone in the club, but I want to thank our chairman of our committee, Barry Gribben, who's done a fantastic job. One of the things we've done this year that's really different is we've lined up a lot of sponsors. They've been very generous in their donations, and all this money will go to fund scholarships. As was mentioned, we fund the web program at the middle school, Link Crew at the high school. That alone is a $15,000 donation, among others. So it's really a pleasure for us to do this, and this is one of those times when we get to have a lot of fun, and we invite everyone to come out and enjoy themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Mr. Funk, sorry. How much money would you guess that Kiwanis has given back to the community of El Segundo in the last few years?
Probably over $500,000, I would say.
$500,000.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, and it's volunteer-led?
Volunteer-led.
No costs?
No
Other
costs.
than a lunch occasionally?
Other than a lunch
Meets
occasionally.
twice a month?
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
How do you know all that?
Thanks, gentlemen. Great work.
And if you want to become a member.
I wasn't going to go that far and solicit for membership tonight. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Persick.
Here.
Councilmember Brand.
Present.
Councilmember Dugan.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyles.
Here.
Mayor Fuentes is absent.
Okay, now is the time and place for public communications, limited to 5 minutes per person, and please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Kathy Dragoni, and I live on Sheldon Street, 922 Sheldon Street, right behind the construction site. We have a petition that's signed by everyone that is actually surrounding the construction site, and I'll read it to you. It says, "We, the residents of Sheldon Street, McCarthy Court, and Walnut Street, respectfully request that you work with us to ensure that D.R. Horton immediately begin addressing issues that their reckless land grading has caused to the residents living around the perimeter of this massive undertaking. We also ask that the city play a greater role in overseeing the project to ensure building and noise codes are adhered to at all times. We have asked representatives of D.R. Horton to perform the following actions to mitigate the negative impact to our well-being and to our property. We ask that you intercede to ensure that they work with residents on the following. We need a 48-hour notice when they will be directly behind our house. The reason for that, many of us work in our homes. I'm going to give you just a little clip of what it's like to live behind this and try to work. That's what we listen to 9 hours a day. Can you imagine working and listening to that for 9 hours a day while your dog's barking at it for 9 hours? We also ask, everyone's going to talk on the awful damage that has been done to all of our homes, cracked walls, cracked pools, everything. But that they go to each home that has incurred damage and tell the owners when and how it will be fixed. When I finally called on August 26th, the shaking was so bad, people were out in the street thinking we had had an earthquake. I called the main person that's working with the community members, who usually doesn't answer calls. I said, if you're not at my house in 15 minutes, I'm going to the Daily Breeze. And finally, I got his attention. And so he came out to the house. And I said, this is ridiculous. I have an elderly neighbor whose kitchen wall is broken in half. You know what his response to us was? These are old houses. Well, guess what? We have a legal right to live in old houses in El Segundo, and they don't have a legal right to ruin our homes. And that's just how it is. That's the truth. And that is their attitude, as this town and these houses are old. Again, they don't have the right to damage our old houses. Secondly, that we require the workers to stop shouting at one another, often profanity-laced, from hundreds of yards, where I can tell you word for word what they said to one another. And I just called tonight at 6:15. This was happening again tonight. Okay? I sent these requests to D.R. Horton on the 26th of August. That if they're going to continue to overdo their sound quality, what somebody's going to talk about, that they can pay for doggy daycare when our excessive noise is making our dogs actually sick from 9 hours of barking and shaking, that they return our calls within 60 minutes of receipt. Oftentimes, we go weeks before they return calls. We would like John Allen to be our contact point, because the person we've had thus far does not respond to us, and when he does, again, we get responses like, well, these are old houses. That they water the dirt daily so that we don't have dust on our cars and our homes that are an inch thick. They keep saying they're going to do it, and then we have to keep calling and reminding them, and then 3 days goes by and we're back where we were. And to keep the noise level below what is listed in subsection 72-4D. They rarely, if ever, are below that. We are at wit's end. Again, our homes are damaged, our lives are being it's unbearable. The noise and the yelling back and forth and what it's doing to our homes, it's just unbearable. I know they have a right to build that, but they also have some responsibility to the community, and that is not being, they are just not honoring that responsibility. You just heard what I played. Again, could you imagine listening to that 9 hours a day? So here are the petitions from the homeowners, and we also ask that the building department sit down with the residents so we can really hash some of this out.
Time is up.
Thank you very much.
My parents' house is one of the elderly parents.
Mike, could you state your name and your address?
Michael Meza. My parents' house is one of the the elderly houses. My dad's in a wheelchair. I walk in and my mom is just a nervous wreck. Her house is falling, tilting, and we just want to know, who's going to take care of that? My parents don't have the money. They're on a fixed income. The ground is clearly going like this. We've got pictures from the beginning to the end. We've tried to get help. Gone to the city. Estella, finally, she came out again after I went up and finally gave us a little bit of hope, hopefully, but we don't know where does it go from here. You guys are the city council members. You guys, I think, are approved it, or there's somebody else. We don't have the information. All I know is my poor parents, the stress is putting on my mom, taking care of my dad, and also worried about our house cracking and falling. I mean, just put yourself in the same spot if you walked into your parents' house. And that's my biggest thing. Who's going to fix it, and how do we stop it? It's basically, when we went to the meeting, we kind of said something about, you took away 14 to 18 feet of sand that's just moving. They're like, yeah, we didn't realize that it was on sand. Well, why didn't they look at that before? There's a lot of issues, as everybody can tell you. Even out around on McCarthy Court, on Walnut, and it's just really sad that we just think that somebody from the city should be at every meeting, and no one has ever been there. And Horwitz said that they've always invited you guys, and no one ever shows up. So I guess our biggest thing is trying to figure out what we're going to do from here.
Thank you, Mike.
Hello, John Dragoni, 922 Shelton. Good evening, council members. I might have mixed up some of my data from the EIR and what the noise ordinance on the books is. But from what I understand and what I've read, the acceptable dB level is 65. But under section 724C, there's an exemption for construction sites, which increases it another 20 decibels, which would put us at 85. Since late August, when we had the compactor, they were grading the level of noise, things in the house were shaking, the courier cabinets, things were moving. All the neighbors experienced this, not just us. I started doing readings twice a week with a decibel reader, same time every day for 30 minutes. And on the average, it was coming in on an average of 98 with a peak of 125. Now, if 85 is an acceptable level, over 100 is not. Just give you an example, today, it averaged, because they were just blowing something on the walls, so it was relatively quiet. They averaged 86 with a peak of 102. But on the norm, it's well over 100. That's a daily basis. We also have construction across the street with 10 workers, air guns, compressors, and they average 73, way below the acceptable level. And there's not the profanity, screaming that was mentioned earlier. All we're asking is if you would intervene, because in the beginning, the person representing the company was very willing to accommodate our needs. And now all of a sudden, since people have been complaining, the attitude has shifted. And I think we need some intervention from the city. We would hope. Another thing, if you could make sure that they stay within the means of the ordinance. That means stop work after 6 and no working on Sunday. As of tonight, we even had to call them and tell them, your workers are still working at 6:15. They'll stop. There was a last Sunday, not this Sunday before, they were working a Sunday. I called them. I called the 2 people that I have contacts with. They did get them to stop. But you know, it's getting a little out of hand, and the attitude towards the people of McCarthy, Walnut, Sheldon is getting pretty sad. You know, mainly, and you know, there's another thing under one of the mitigating measures, 4.3-1, and I believe that was on the EIR. They're supposed to notify us within 10 days of construction, telling the residents within 1,000 feet what the proposed construction was. We asked them kindly, just give us 48 hours notice. They're not even doing either. So I hope you can see that we're not up here just complaining. We're basing things on facts. It's written, that's in the ordinance. We just want to ask you for your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grioni.
Hi, Dawn Sohagian, 934 Sheldon Street. I'd like to put on the record that my house is falling in. I just recently put a pool and a spa in that is now leaking. I spent over $80,000 in the last year and a half redoing my house. My kitchen, the ceiling is coming down, the walls are cracked, all throughout the house is cracked, even the front yard, the driveway and the tile, everything's cracked. The amount of movement in the ground is unbelievable. I work too from my home. My feet are shaking because of the vibration is so loud every day. And I just need to put on the record, I did file a complaint yesterday with the city, but I need to put on the record that I spent a lot of money on my house and it's now being destroyed by D.R. Horton. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Scott Goldfarb. I'm at 936 Sheldon. In terms of, I think, D.R. Horton's response, we were here a couple weeks ago talking about parking, some of the parking issues with Imperial and Sheldon and so on, and, you know, the trends in the direction that it's heading. And with the park and the dog park and airport workers, and talking about looking forward. The D.R. Horton project's a multi-year project. They don't have the number of employees that right now they have fewer employees than they're going to have down the road once they start really building. And as we started talking about this topic, their response is basically, well, we'll see what we can do. And that's, I think, the concern is that we've got details about how it's affecting people, but when it comes to, solutions or whatnot, and these, other people heard this at the parking situation. I mean, their response is kind of like, hey, I'll see what I can do. So in terms of, I think accepting responsibility, trying to be a part of the solution, they've kind of removed themselves from it. And I think that's a lot of our concerns, is that you're looking at, again, a multi-year project. And at this point, what they've shown, kind of the true colors a little bit, is, hey, you know what are you going to do about it? So that's kind of our point, is like, well, yeah, that's right. What can we do about it? Because they've shown that they don't want to be a part of the solution until someone steps into it. So.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfarb.
Council, my name is Eric Franson from 912 Sheldon. We're in the corner of that construction zone there. Just want to really make you aware of what's going on here. In the past, we've been involved in other construction issues, and City Council was not aware of what was going on in the city. So, again, we have endured thousands of dollars of damage, cracked walls, marble floors cracking. I can go on, walls in the back near them falling apart. I just want to find out how the city's going to handle that. One of my biggest concerns right now, we have good inspectors in El Segundo. I want to make sure they do due diligence, because if you ever look up D.H. Horton on the internet, they have a lot of issues with their homes and people walking away from them. That happens here, our house prices will go down. Maybe take a look at that when you get a chance. Just want to make sure you guys are aware of what's going on, who we're working with. That's about it.
Thank you.
Awareness.
Thank you.
How you doing this evening? My name's Adam Aylesworth. I'm at 547 East Walnut. Our situation's a little bit different, as we're in an apartment building and the front of our unit faces the construction as opposed to the rear. I'm the only person from our building that could actually be here tonight, so I'm just going to read a letter, if that's okay. To whom it may concern, my name is Henry Oswald. I reside at 547 East Walnut Avenue, Apartment 6, with my wife and 2 children. There's been construction ongoing on 2 sides of our apartment building for several months. I would like to consider myself a very patient individual when it comes to this construction project, but it seems that this is quickly coming to an end. I've noticed that there are some facets of this project that could use improving, and I'm addressing you with the hopes that you could assist me with the following. Every day there's been dust and dirt that's accumulating on the front walkway of our apartment building, and I have been spending some time sweeping this away every week. I know that you might not consider some dirt to be a problem, but it's a daily nuisance for several reasons. We have to walk through this, and it sticks to our shoes, thus bringing it into our homes. If we should open our windows for any length of time, the dust and the dirt blows into our apartments and it's contaminating everything inside, causing us to spend both time and money on cleaning. Sorry, allergies. I also suffer from asthma. This is not helping my health. It makes our building look dirty, and definitely not the $2,000 plus we pay for rent. Dirt is also covering our cars, forces us to wash our cars more often. I would hope the people at this project could sweep every day and make sure they clean the outside of our building occasionally. Also, they need to think of the ways of lessening the dirt and dust that's leaving the building site. I do know they used to sprinkle water over the dirt, but that has done little to solve the problem. Basically, since they were creating a mess, I feel they should clean it up. And then more stuff on the timing and the noise ordinance. This gentleman works 2 jobs, and he's at home from about 7 a.m. until 10 p.m., so his daytime sleep is very important to him. I think that's pretty much, I mean, everyone's kind of said a lot of the same stuff, and our building in particular, we're vaulted above ground level, and shaking in our building is extremely bad. However, I kind of have 2 channels to work through, as I can't really do anything about it. I have to call our property manager, who I don't know if she's going to call the city. I've told her about it. A couple other people have told her about it. So we kind of wanted to just be here to show that our presence is here as well. You know, not just the homeowners, but the people that are. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
My name is Hassan Senati. I'm resident at 853 McCarthy Court. In continuation of the same issues risen today, I would like to also bring your attention to the fact that the builder has initially they have been very good with us, but however, it seems the trend is changing. Recently, the section of the street, the Walnut Street from the Payne up to McCarthy Court, entire block, was declared as no parking 12-way entire day. Signs appear on the 25th of August. Of the nowhere, these signs carry no information as to who has placed them. It only says no parking anytime by the order of the police department. I called police department. The police department had no information about this. I went to building section and finally looking at the sign of the DR Horton, I called them and they said that yes, we put the sign. It seems, I don't know whether the city has been informed or do they have to get the permission from city prior to putting such a signs or not. And second, if they put this sign initially from the 27th of August up to 9th of September, almost 2 weeks, including Saturdays and Sundays, which are not working days. And they requested everybody not to park at any time in this street. This is a place that usually about 13 to 14 car parks, and we are very short of the parking spots as such. To make a long story short, this period of the work extended. They extended 1 more week. They added up to 15th of September, where the entire street was closed. The nature of the work was apparently to add a sewage line from the project to the city sewage line that necessitate opening of the street. I would think that they could have done it more efficiently or more time basis or in a way that respect the residents in a better way. Half of the street was not involved at all with this construction. They could have left that off for parking, which was not done. So in general, I just want to bring your attention as to whether we can request DR Horton to be more respectful toward the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Boyles, Mayor Pro Tem Boyles, and the El Segundo City Council, and good evening. Many of you are aware that since 1987, Tree Musketeers has gathered the youth of El Segundo to plant trees and to promote the well-being of this beautiful city's environment. My name is Sebastian Hansen, and I am a youth manager of Tree Musketeers, the next generation. When the original Tree Musketeers establishment formally closed this past April, the youth managers, including myself, wanted to revive this wonderful organization and to continue to do what we do best, to serve the environment and encourage the youth and community to pitch in. We mustered up the funds to purchase most of our former equipment, and among the ruins, founded Tree Musketeers, the next generation. Tree Musketeers, the next generation invites you and the community of El Segundo to gather and provide tender loving care, abbreviated as TLC, for our trees on Memory Row alongside Imperial Avenue. Mark your calendars, because on Saturday, October 21st, from 10 a.m. to noon, we will be holding our largest event of the year, aside from Arbor Day. We will be expecting at least 150 volunteers to assist in our massive effort to thank the trees for what they have done to provide us. For more details, you can go to treemusketeers.com. I hope to see your faces among these volunteers, and don't be afraid to invite your friends, family, and coworkers to join us on this great occasion. Again, thank you for having me here. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. Well done. Any other public comments? All right. I think we're going to want to comment. Speaking for myself, I can't speak for the rest of the council. A little bit caught off guard, actually, with the DR Horton contingency. I was wondering why we had so many people in the audience. I'm guessing that my colleagues feel the same. So, having said that, why don't Greg maybe bring us up to speed on what's transpired up until this point, please?
Well, being one myself, residents of El Segundo are very patient. We put up with airport noise, we put up with the Hyperion, and for this number of people to show up with this many issues, I think we got to believe that there's a problem out there. D.R. Horton told staff, they told the city council, and they told the community that they'd be good neighbors during this construction project. And it sounds like it started that way, but something isn't happening that was happening previously. So staff and myself will definitely intervene with D.R. Horton. I sent an email during this testimony to tell them that we have an issue and that we need to talk. And we'll certainly hold them accountable with whatever rules and regulations they agreed to. But more importantly, there are things that they can do that the city can't force them to do that they probably should to be good neighbors and to fulfill the commitment that they made to the council when the project was approved. And Sam, I don't know if you have... Sam Lee is our Director of Planning and Building. I'll certainly engage him in this project. We knew that D.R. Horton was meeting with neighbors. We knew that there were issues with property damage. D.R. Horton told us that they were out taking photos, trying to create records of the damage before and after types of things. I knew that they were having some issues with certain property owners who weren't allowing them access, which is kind of important if you're trying to establish a record of a before and after record. They are, I believe, in probably one of the more impactful phases of the construction with the grading that's going on out there, but sounds like we need to talk with, city staff needs to talk with both the neighbors and with D.R. Horton.
And I ran into somebody, it was either, I think it was just yesterday, outside city council from D.R. Horton and asked him how it was going. And he said, well, we've got some issues that we're going to address, namely walls, pool damage, some of the things that were described here tonight. But otherwise it was going well. So I'm hearing something different clearly from our residents. And so I think, speak for all of us probably, we'd like to hear a next council meeting, a report back after you've had an opportunity to meet with D.R. Horton and talk to the residents, your staff. And I know Mike would like to add something.
Well, the residents that are around this construction, have you called the city to complain about this? So have you got the responses that you expected from the city on this is the question. So that would disappoint me, right? Having to come here to get this resolved is something that should never occur. We should handle these things before it comes to the council over here. So, part of that report, I'd like to hear back who was contacted and what we've done about it, because if I'm taking it on face value what you said here, but the dust mitigation doesn't seem to be adequate. There's vibration and land movement, so there's been some cuts and some earth moving around, and it's had some damage on houses. So is there a mitigation in place for those things, and how is the city involved? And from a building inspection perspective, are they following? Do we have an inspector that's on this, watching it and making sure it's okay? And it seems like there's a gap in the communications here that disturbs me more than anything. So. Okay.
I think one thing just also is, Mike, I know we go way back, and if you ever have an issue, you don't have to necessarily, although this was very effective, it's a lot of your time. There's 5 of us up here that are pretty accessible by many different ways. So if you have an issue, bring it forth and save yourself the time. But thank you for coming here and voicing your concern.
Appreciate that, yes. Regretfully, it shouldn't have to come this far. It should get resolved at the staff level, but we'll do our best to help you.
Dr. Brand, anything? Okay. All right, that closes out public comments. Reminder, the fair at Richmond Street is this Saturday, 10 to something.
9 to 5.
9 to 5, thank you. Not even close. All right, procedural motions. A, consideration of a motion to read all ordinances and resolutions on the agenda by title only.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0. Okay, we have a public hearing, which is consideration and possible action regarding the approval of environmental assessment number EA 1150 and introduction of an ordinance zone text amendment number ZTA 16-02 to sections of the El Segundo Municipal Code, ESMC, Title 15, regarding signs. Adopting this ordinance is statutorily exempt from further environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and CEQA guidelines. Because it consists only of minor revisions and clarifications to existing zoning regulations and related procedures, the applicant is the City of El Segundo, and Mark, you had some guidance on this one, correct?
Yes.
Read the public hearing first.
Staff is recommending continuance of this item till October 3rd, and so it's recommended that the public hearing be opened and continue until October 3rd.
Okay. Now open for public comments, public hearing on this matter.
And just a motion by council to continue to October 3rd.
I need a motion
So
to continue.
moved.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 4-0. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, one of the reason for the recommendation to continue is I asked staff to get input from the Chamber of Commerce and EDAC on this change. EDAC meeting is tomorrow.
Great. Thank you. Wise. Appreciate that. All right. Number 2, consideration and possible action to adopt an ordinance amending El Segundo Municipal Code Chapter 4 of Title 5 regarding stormwater and urban runoff pollution control in its entirety and amending ESMC Chapter 7 of Title 5, excuse me, regarding stormwater planning and land development program implementation in its entirety. The applicant, again, is the City of El Segundo. Fiscal impact, none. So, this is the time and place here to fixed for a public hearing. City Clerk, was proper notice of the hearing given in a timely manner?
Yes, it was.
City Clerk, has any written communication been received regarding this public hearing?
None has been received.
Thank you. The public hearing is now open. Mr. Carpenter, who will make the presentation, or his staff member.
Ken Berkman, our Director of Public Works.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Briefly, this effort is to get us into compliance with the Clean Water Act as well as the state National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, which provides for proper stormwater runoff pollution management. The 2 chapters in question that we are looking to change the language in our code. Chapter 4 relates to illicit connections and illicit discharges. Chapter 7 relates to construction projects that could increase stormwater flows to downstream erosion potential sites. And that's the 2 reasons that we're modifying the code here.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Okay, the public hearing is now open for public input. Seeing no public input, motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
4-0, aye. Okay, and let's see, City Attorney will read the ordinance by title only.
Yes, Mayor and Council. An ordinance amending Chapter 4 of Title 5 of the El Segundo Municipal Code regarding stormwater and urban runoff pollution control in its entirety, and amending Chapter 7 of Title 5 of the El Segundo Municipal Code regarding planning and land development program implementation in its entirety is ready for introduction.
I'd like to introduce it and waive the first reading of the proposed ordinance and schedule a second reading for adoption.
Thank you, Dr. Brand. Second?
I'll second it.
It doesn't
Doesn't
require
need it.
a
Okay.
motion, so this will be brought back for a potential second read and adoption at the October 3rd council meeting.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, item 3. Forgive me for a moment. Hold on, one more page. Thanks, Mike. Consideration and possible action regarding approval of environmental assessment number EA 1185, development agreement number DA 17-01, and zone text amendment number ZTA 17-02 to amend the development agreement number DA 0301, revised and restated development agreement to expand the project size and eliminate most tenant size restrictions, to amend the commercial center C4 zone to eliminate size limits for permitted uses, add new permitted uses, and increase the permitted number and size of monument signs, and add a site plan review procedure. Also to modify the conditions of approval for the original project and to approve an addendum to the final environmental impact report and adopt a statement of overriding considerations for the above changes. The project site is the Plaza El Segundo and the Point Development Project, aka the site, and the applicant is Street Retail Incorporated. This is the time and place hereto fixed for a public hearing. City Clerk, was proper notice of the hearing given in a timely manner?
Yes, it was.
City Clerk, has any written communication been received regarding this public hearing?
None has been received.
Okay, thank you. And let's see, public hearing is now open. Mr. Carpenter, who's going to present?
Greg McLean, our planning manager, will make this presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Today we'll be talking about the Plaza El Segundo and the Point developments, which are at the corner of Sepulveda, soon to be PCH, and Rosecrans. This is a map of the area. The original Plaza El Segundo site is shown in red on the map, with the public streets not shaded. And in 2005, it was approved for 425,000 square feet of development. It was subsequently amended in 2008. There was an addendum to the EIR done at that point, and it was expanded to 448,829 square feet. Ultimately, in 2013, another addendum was done to the EIR, and the Point was built, which we're familiar with. During this time also, there were multiple amendments to the development agreement and several changes to the zoning code to accommodate certain uses that came up periodically. So the application before us tonight involves a development agreement, zone text amendment, some physical improvements to the project. Conditions of approval are going to be consolidated, and the environmental review. So let's take these one at a time. The development agreement involves a consolidation of prior amendments. There were several of them, so they're all being brought together into one coherent document. Which will make life a lot easier for us because we used to have to review several documents every time there was a question or a change of use out there. We will eliminate size limits on some uses. We will put new limits on non-sales tax uses, simplify size limits on tenant spaces, and this will be for a 20-year term. The zone text amendment involves amending the uses in the C4 zone. Over the years, a number of uses became customarily allowed there through other means, and so we're just making that official by amending the zoning code. Amending the uses that are subject to a use permit, so conditional use permits and administrative use permits for certain types of uses that need a little bit of additional scrutiny. Modify the provisions regarding signs, and I'm going to have a few graphics on the signs here. The bottom of this display shows the proposed new signs. There's 4 styles there. And the photographs above are the actual signs that are out there now. So the signs will become taller. Especially the one on the far right is a new sign to replace the sort of slanted one to the left of it. And I'll get into a little bit more on that. The photograph on the left is the existing condition, and then the one on the right is the mock-up of what this sign. This is a tall sign, 65 feet tall. The reason for that is that it's about 1,300 feet from PCH and about 1,300 feet from Rosecrans, and that portion of the project, which is called the edge, is suffering from a lack of visibility. This sign will help considerably. It's so large because it has to be seen from 1,300 feet away, in which case it won't appear that large. We're also proposing a site plan review process so that we maintain some control over what's being proposed out there. Physical improvements, most importantly, 11,500 square feet of new floor area in the space that is currently occupied by Cost Plus World Market. I'll show you where that is. This will be at the back of the building in the service area, basically. About 5,200 square feet there, plus a 6,300 square foot mezzanine on the inside. This is to accommodate a potential new tenant, and I think the applicant will have more to say about that. Also, an additional 7,350 square feet for other uses, including temporary uses called pop-up retail. I have a few examples of what that's like. These are temporary uses that come in. They're currently very trendy, and they close up at night, but they unfold in the daytime, and people can come and you know, shop at them. This is one example. Here's another example that we found. One more example. These tend to be high-end, and they tend to be very, well, trendy. They attract young people mostly. They are temporary, and so this is something that we're seeing in a lot of the better shopping centers around the country and in Southern California, and the applicant is asked to be able to do this. So we're providing some provision for that. The conditions of approval is simple. There are so many sets of conditions of approval. They're all just being basically put into one document. So the environmental review, as I said, in 2005 there was an EIR. It was addendums were made in 2008 and 2013, so this will be the third addendum. In this addendum, we've analyzed traffic, air quality, greenhouse gases, and noise impacts. We found no significant impacts above the EIR levels. Our EIR consultant is here, as well as traffic consultant and the city's traffic consultant that peer review the other traffic consultants' work. So if you have any specific questions about the EIR, we are well prepared to answer those. So in conclusion, we believe that this project will help the shopping centers succeed. This is a difficult and trying time for retail throughout the country. Shopping centers are experiencing closures all over the place. We like to think that we're getting out ahead of that. We're providing the applicant a streamlined process for getting changes out there. We know as users change. We think that this will benefit the city financially because we'll fill up vacancies and generate sales tax. We're ensuring that a certain level of sales tax generating uses are part of the project. And basically what we'd like to do is help this property owner be flexible in these changing times. And we think that these changes that we proposed help achieve that. So our recommendation is that the City Council adopt the draft resolution approving the addendum to the EIR and the statement of overriding considerations, and introduce a draft ordinance which would approve the zone text amendment and development agreement amendments. That concludes the report. I'll be available if you have any questions.
Yeah, do we ask questions now or open it up for public hearing? Mark?
You can ask brief questions of staff if you have this point in time.
Okay, I'll open up. I know Dr. Brand has a question of staff.
Yeah, Greg, on an earlier slide you talked about 1B, I believe. Is that in reference to adding the edge to Plaza El Segundo? Was that what created 1B?
No, 1B refers to the point.
To the point.
So originally the entire, it's too far back, I guess. The portion along Sepulveda Boulevard, but not much deeper than that, on the southern part of the project was part of the original project, but it was expanded in the first addendum in 2008, and that became then known as 1B. And then the original north of the railroad tracks became 1A.
Okay. And the edge was?
The edge was always part of 1A.
Part of 1A.
Yeah.
But was it added to 1A later? I'm trying to recall back.
You'll have to forgive me, I wasn't here at the time.
Yeah,
so.
okay.
I'm being told it was part of the original.
Okay. And I recall it was the second time that the developer used that name in this town.
Yeah.
It trended well, right?
And interestingly, yeah, I guess the name works, but they're considering a different name. I think it may have been on the sign example that we saw, but the applicant will talk to you about that.
It could create confusion. Thank you.
Any other questions from council?
Not for staff, I'll wait to hear them.
Okay. All right. Is the applicant going to speak, or do I open up for public hearing? Mark, I need your guidance here.
This is part of the public hearing, but the applicant will present next.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Boyles, council members. My name is Stuart McDonald, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening on behalf of our properties, The Point and Plaza El Segundo. My company, Federal Realty, is in the business of running retail centers in the finest markets in the country. Indeed, we were very interested in this part of the country this area of Southern California for many years and monitored transactions. And finally, in 2011, we acquired Plaza El Segundo, which is a terrific grocery-anchored retail center with a lot of great tenants. Since then, we've built Point, a property that we hope many of you have had a chance to see, which we think more thoroughly encompasses our vision of where retail really is heading. It's a first-in-class retail lifestyle center that has more of an emphasis on leisure and recreation. My company is really, we're an owner-operator. We're not a transaction-based company. Really, the best properties in our portfolio at this point are ones that we've owned for many years, and we've had the benefit of working with elected officials like yourselves, members of the community, to really fine-tune the center and get it tailored to the actual needs of the community. Some of them like Santana Row in Silicon Valley, Assembly Square in Boston, Pentagon Row in Virginia, you may have heard of. The reason we're here this evening, though, is to discuss the documents that currently regulate these quality properties and the need to evolve them so that these centers remain vital in the rapidly changing retail environment. Some of the circumstances that I think needs to be considered as part of this hearing, Greg mentioned it briefly, online sales are taking an ever bigger bite of the retail sector, and the fixed location retailers are being particularly hard hit by this trend. We're seeing it throughout our portfolio. Like I said, we have properties throughout the U.S. We have about 20 million square feet under management through about 100 centers throughout the U.S. The other trend that we're seeing that's very troublesome is that there's actually just too much retail infrastructure in the country at this point based upon the actual demand and what's happening with online shopping. There is going to be a major correction we see coming into the market, particularly hitting enclosed malls, which fortunately we don't really invest in, and centers that are department store anchored. The other trend that we're really seeing is that consumer spending patterns, disposable income is not being spent as much on hard goods. I talked a little bit earlier about lifestyle centers. People are spending much more of their disposable income on entertainment, dining, less on hard goods. And the other issue that we see is that retail vacancies really beget more retail vacancies. It has a snowball effect. And in particular, we talked a little bit about the property known as the Edge in the diagram. It's always suffered a little bit of an identity crisis. It really needs to be rebranded. We have one possibility of rebranding at the works. We're still playing around with what the concept would be for that property. But at this point, virtually 50% of that property is either vacant, tenants are in rent relief, or we are operating community benefit occupancies where we are not being paid anything for giving people space. The thinking behind that is it's better to have some activity on the property than no activity on the property. At least it attracts some business to the restaurants, but it's not a long-term sustainable cycle for us as an operator. And even our brand new center, The Point, there's actually a handful of spaces out there that have remained vacant since we opened the center. They've never been occupied. We're looking to fill those spaces still. It's a struggle to find quality retailers that we think actually have financial staying power in the market at this point. We have a fairly stringent vetting process. We have some tenants that may be interested, but we don't want to bring someone and have them fail. We consult regularly with economists on what's happening and get advice from them. And one of the statistics that they shared with us, which is fairly alarming, is they said basically if the current rate of retail failures continues through the end of 2017, it will actually be worse than the worst years during the 2008 recession. We think with some very modest adjustments to our existing regulations that govern the property development agreement, the zoning, we can have these properties be successful, but we need more flexibility to modify and bring in a more flexible range of uses and get some complementary spillover effect between the tenants. I don't have anything further to add to the planning staff's. Thank you. Oh, yes. A couple of points that were brought up during the staff presentation. On the cost plus space, we have been working with a tenant since April of this year. We'd really like to bring them into the center. Unfortunately, I'm not at liberty to share the name of the tenant. They're a nationally known brand, though. They have tremendously strong sales. We think that they will be a great complementary use to the center. They want to take the cost plus space. It is not quite large enough for them, but at this point in time, we would be outside the bounds of our EIR allowances. So even to get that level of adjustment to bring in this great new tenant, we just can't move forward at this point in time. I don't think I really have anything further to add after planning staff's great thorough presentation. I'd like to acknowledge that Federal Realty truly appreciates the Planning Commission's recommendation for approval on these, what we think are very modest adjustments to our existing development agreement and zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I think we have some questions for you, if you don't mind. Is that okay?
I want to understand that point you made near the end there about the national retailer that you'd like to bring in.
Mm-hmm.
Is Cost Plus coming out of there?
They will not be continuing.
Okay.
Cost Plus has already given notice that they will not continue their lease.
Got it.
Correct. Yeah.
And then secondly, you know, there's development of a redevelopment of the shopping center immediately across the street from these in our neighboring city of Manhattan Beach. Are you seeing them in, I assume you're familiar with their plans. Yep. Are you seeing them move more towards creating a center like the Point, more of a lifestyle center? And what lessons can you learn from what their plans are to help on our side of the street?
Yeah. A lot of it depends upon how they re-tenant the center, and I'm not familiar with exactly who they're bringing in. I'm sure they probably are talking to the same people that we talk to on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen that it is as strong a move towards a lifestyle center as we have at the Point. Point is a fairly small center and has a lot of landscape amenities and outdoor kind of space. I'm not sure that I see that as part of their plan at this point, but it's been a while since I've seen their development drawings, honestly.
And that's not a center that Federal owns?
No, it is not. No, we consider them a competitor of ours. Right. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I just had one question. On the pop-up retail,
Mm-hmm.
would that go, where would those pieces go, and would they take up parking spaces, and how would you position them?
Right. At this point, the only locations we've been looking into it seriously is we have been developing some drawings to rebrand what's called the Edge, maybe called the Works. There's a couple landscape areas that might be converted. 2 areas right now we're looking at that might be used for pop-up stores, so it wouldn't be part of the parking field. That said, though, I think that there is an additional planning review for anything that's proposed with respect to how these spaces are configured, so it's not like we can drag out a trailer in the dark at night and drop it in the middle of the parking lot.
So to that end, we would be approving, as part of this, all these amendments, the ability to do pop-ups, but they would still require some planning oversight in advance?
That is my understanding.
By the planning department or the planning commission, or both?
The pop-up retails would require an administrative use permit, so that would be approved by the planning director and then reviewed by the planning commission. I'm sorry, I unfortunately missed your question. I hope
No, you answered it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, do you have a question?
Well, yeah, I have a concern about that. I saw the presentation and then the high-end look, and then when I read it in the text, I had this vision of a cargo container showing up or a taco stand or something like that. So, there's a big separation in there. I'm wondering if there is another way, I'm all for giving this a try. Is there a way to handle that on a conditional use permit or something without changing the zoning to see if it works? I mean, is there
It's still a use permit. The conditional use permit would take quite a bit longer to process, and it would be more expensive. I think that our understanding was that this was sufficient review, because it's not a carte blanche allowance to do these. They'd have to bring each of these in and show us where they're going to be and how they're going to look, and then the building department has, or the division has additional requirements for ADA compliance and all that sort of stuff. So there will be pretty extensive review under the administrative use permit process. That was our recommendation.
Yeah, so my question was, though, is there a way to test drive this to see what it really looks like before we change the zoning out there?
Well, you could provide for temporary structures and not provide for permanent ones initially. That would be one way to do it.
Yeah, and we'd be completely comfortable with that, as long as it's not, like a 3-day permit or something. It would have to be worthwhile for a vendor to bring it out and bring in utilities, but we would be comfortable with some sort of, fuse on the allowance.
Because, I'm comfortable with what you've done with the point and everything else. Everything there is top-notch and really well done. So seeing the presentation, I don't have as much concern, but owners change, things sell, and you never know what happens in the future here. So I'm just trying to ease my way into this one for some reason. I know. Leave it to the oil worker. I know.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we can address that in a second, Mark, in terms of how we would amend the proposed amendment.
Before you get into that level of detail, though, it'd be good to have the rest of the public speak if there are any.
I have a question too, though. You mentioned, I think, going outside the bounds of the EIR as it relates to cost plus specifically. What are the legal implications, Mark, if any, on that?
What they're saying is that under the current land use entitlements, it wouldn't be permitted, but as what's proposed, if they're approved, it would be.
Okay, thank you. Any other concerns we need to be aware of in terms of the EIR process?
Not that haven't already been shared with the council.
Okay, thank you. But you feel sufficiently that, what's the right word I'm looking for? We've mitigated our risk. And if we approve this, there's not substantial risk or significant risk of any backlash of any kind?
No, not other than what's been shared with the council already.
Thank you. What was the planning commission vote on this? Unanimous?
It was unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
And any response from the owners of the center in Manhattan Beach, because they had something to say about these projects 10 years ago or whenever they started?
Not this time. No communication came from them.
They're probably mad about renaming the highway.
Okay, public hearing is open for public input. Thank you very much, Mr. McDonald. Okay, it looks like we've received all public comments. May I have a motion to close public hearing?
I'll motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh. Any further council discussion, or would you like council discussion? It sounds like we have the desire to make this a little bit more temporary in nature. Mr. Dugan?
Just to test drive it before we change the...
I agree with Councilmember Dugan that we put it on a temporary basis with a fixed time that's reasonable, to be a year or two, just so that we don't take a step where we're stuck with them going into the future, and we end up not liking them.
Okay, we have consensus on that, Mark, so how should we word that?
This section, it's on page 7 of 13 of the ordinance, and it currently reads temporary or permanent uses conducted in trailers, shipping containers, or similar structures subject to an administrative use permit in accordance with section 15-5G-4, perhaps just to reword that such that it would be permanent uses conducted in trailers, shipping containers, or similar structures not to exceed a time period of 1 year, or what was the council's thinking?
I'd ask Stuart, the applicant, to give us a time frame on that. I want to give him a chance to be successful. I just want to see what it looks like before we put it in. So Stuart, can you help us with that? I'm sorry.
Sure. Is it possible that it's a 1 year evaluation period, and then planning staff, we decide whether it's acceptable to continue? Is that what we're saying?
I think so.
I'm okay with that, yeah.
After 1 year, it must be vacated.
I'd like to just see one first, kind of a deal. The
Yeah.
pictures were,
So evaluation in 1 year.
Well, let me clarify. If you permit a permanent structure, you can't require it to be taken down after 1 year. That's why if you allow a temporary structure for a limited duration, you can require that to be taken down.
And, okay.
Can you work with that, Stuart?
Mm-hmm.
So a year's okay to approve it as a temporary structure.
Right.
That keeps our options open. We get our test drive, and then we know what to do a year from now.
And then you could come back and either take it out of the code or allow for permanent or longer periods of time.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It seems fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mark, what do we need to do differently in terms of reading the protocol here?
Okay. First, call up the resolution.
Thank you.
Kick my ass later. First action would be a proposed adoption of resolution approving environmental assessment number EA 1185 and an addendum to the final environmental impact report for the Plaza El Segundo development project, and readopting a mitigation monitoring program and statement of overriding considerations is ready for adoption.
Okay, may I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
Yeah, I'd like to introduce the ordinance.
First is, I'm sorry, I should have been more explicit. The first is the resolution for the environmental approval, and the ordinance will be second. So the first is for adoption of the environmental resolution. We need a motion.
I'll move that.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0.
And the second is the introduction of an ordinance approving zone text amendment number ZTA 17-02, amending El Segundo Municipal Code 15-5G-2, 15-5G-4, 15-5G-6, and 15-5G-9, and adding section 15-5G-10, and approving development agreement number DA 17-01 for the Plaza El Segundo development, with the including the change of not allowing the allowing for the temporary pop-ups, if you will. I read the language in earlier, but with that language change.
Okay, who will introduce the ordinance?
I'd like to, and bring it back for second reading and adoption on October 3rd.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We wish you all the success. We'd love to see that thing continue to be successful, particularly Edge, see that revamped. Thank you.
And one more embarrassing question. Are we gonna brag about this mystery tenant or not?
I hope so.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. On to, if you're not sleepy enough now, I see some of you in the audience. Now we're getting out of the budget. Joe? Consideration and possible action regarding the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget, including all city revenues and expenditures. Adoption of the resolution approving the 2017-2018 final operating and capital improvement budget and the 2017-18 appropriations limit. Copies of the fiscal year 2017-2018 preliminary budget can be found in the library, city clerk's office, and on the city's website. Fiscal impact, total revenues including transfers in of $116,446,188. Total expenditures including transfers out of $130,235,960. General fund revenues of $69,335,290. Expenditures including transfers out of $72,390,880. Mr. Lilio is presenting, our Director of Finance. I assume.
All right, well, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Boyles, City Council members. I'll start off with the agenda for tonight. So we're going to touch on the fiscal year 17-18 proposed general fund operating and capital budget, the 17-18 proposed CIP budget, 17-18 proposed budget for special revenue and enterprise funds, and then the recommended action and next steps. And everyone should have a handout of the presentation. So before I begin, I would just like to start off by recognizing all the effort and time put into the development of this budget by each department head, their support staff, the finance staff, and city council. The fiscal year 17-18 budget represents a fiscally prudent budget that addresses much needed infrastructure and technology investment while holding the line in the department operating and maintenance line item budgets. So for fiscal year 17-18, the fiscal year end fund balance, so that's going to be the bottom number on this slide, we are anticipating to have an additional $2.8 million above the required 18% reserve level. The $2.8 million has been allocated to various infrastructure and technology projects, as well as a payment towards the city's pension liability with CalPERS. The next few slides will walk through each of these details. So revenues, as presented on the August 31st budget workshop, those have not changed. Those remain at $69.3 million. Expenditures were presented on August 31st at $68.8 million. The new proposed budget is $72.4 million, and I will go over those directed increases in the subsequent slides. This is a snapshot of the revenue, the main categories, and again, it has not changed. That's $69.3 million. The preliminary budget, again, that was presented at $68.8 million on August 31st, which is that middle column. The proposed budget is now $72.4 million. And the far right-hand column, there's the variances, and I'll go over those with you right now. So the total changes represent $414,100 in operating costs, and that is made up from additional $20,000 from an HR audit, $91,500 for additional credit card fees, and this is mainly due to moving online with the business license renewal process and the anticipation of implementing Tyler cashiering, which will increase the credit card transaction volume in the city. There's an additional $302,600 in department requests, which I'll get into detail in the very next slide, and then $3,174,000 in transfers out to fund CIP and technology projects. So the $302,000 in departmental requests are listed on this slide. There are two new items on this slide that were not previously presented to City Council. And that is the top one, the Economic Development website for $100,000. Also $10,000 for a speed study at 3 intersections of concern as discussed by City Council on the August 31st meeting. I don't know if there's any questions regarding to those two items. The remaining items were already presented on August 31st, and Just to recap that, that's the HR part-time non-benefited management analyst at 20 hours a week. That's $45,600. The police assistant 2 at $79,300. Public Works to reclassify a vacant management analyst position to a senior management analyst. That totals $9,700, so $7,800 coming from the general fund, and then $1,900 from the water and sewer funds. And Recreation and Parks, professional and technical contractual money that they're looking for to help fund increased landscaping demands. I believe it's on Main Street for $59,900. So this has all been included in the non-departmental budget. I don't know if you want to open up discussion on any of these items at all.
Ron has a question, I think.
I do. Go ahead.
On the part-time management analyst for HR, you said it was non-benefited. Is that because it's not over 20 hours a week? Is that your cut here in the city?
Yes.
Keep it. Thank you.
And then the, previously, the facilities needs assessment was below the line on the regular budget. That's now above the line. Would that not normally go here listing as a change?
So that's going to be on the subsequent slide for CIP.
Okay, I just want to make sure. And then on the Rex Parks, the professional technical, I believe that was for the professional management for the onboarding of the pool, isn't it?
This is downtown landscape.
Oh, this is downtown
right.
landscaping? But we do have some place in there for the added staff for the contractual staff for the onboarding of the pool?
That is correct.
Yes,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, so council is in full agreement with these items?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, the capital improvement projects were presented to council on August 31st. The only change here is the addition of the facility needs assessment for $200,000. Again, that's on the very bottom on the left-hand side. So total general fund CIP projects are $1.6 million, and total technology projects funded by the general fund are $490,000. And so again, the only change here was that $200,000, and the reason why is we inadvertently accounted for the community cameras and fixed license plate readers twice in technology and CIP. So that was removed from the technology bucket, remains in the capital improvement bucket. Is there any questions on this slide at all?
So on this slide, you've set aside $200,000 for golf course lighting, but in your revenue side, you presented earlier, you don't have any revenue coming in from Top Golf at this time. Got an expenditure, but you don't have any revenue.
Correct. So what we did with the golf course fund, with the exception of this one particular item here, is we did the status quo budget, assuming Top Golf would not come on board with the budget. Then if Top Golf is approved at some subsequent city council meeting, we'll amend the golf budget at that time.
Thank you.
And then just clarification on the facilities needs assessment, that's going to be an assessment of all of our current facilities citywide so that we can prioritize maintenance in the future.
That is correct. Public Works Director Ken Berkman can elaborate more on that if you would like, but yes, that is correct.
So looking at our Parks and Recs facilities, bathrooms there, Joslin Center. Everything.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
I think that was the one item on the CPAC Capital Improvement Committee that we had decided not to pursue earlier, and then we changed our tune on that one. Felt it was important after Mr. Berkman made his case as well. Yeah.
Okay, if there's no additional questions, I'll move on.
I'm good. But that was a good move, though, to add that facilities assessment in there.
Okay, this slide represents the summer recap.
It'll be bad for Ken, because it's going to give him a list of things he's going to have to address in the future year. He's going to be very busy, so.
This slide represents the summer recap of allocating the undesignated reserves of $2.8 million. So again, $1.6 million going to CIP, and again, that's also listed in attachment D. in your agenda packet. 490,000 going towards technology projects, and that's listed in attachment E in your packet. And then the additional of $600,000 that's going to be paid towards the CalPERS pension liability. I'm sorry.
Do you have an additional slide on the CalPERS? I know you discussed it in previous meetings, just what that saves us in potential interest down the line. If not, could you just kind of give us a quick recap of that?
Absolutely. So the $600,000 in additional payments, that would save the city $1 million in interest. So if we did not pay this $600,000, the city would pay $1.6 million to $600,000 initial principal amount plus the $1 million in interest that CalPERS would be assessing.
Thank you.
So this leaves an additional $136,000 in undesignated general fund reserves. One potential use of these funds would be to fund a Section 115 pension trust. So staff will be bringing an item back to council on in October to address, Drew, the question that you just asked is the pension item. So we'll be bringing an item back to address all those various pension options that the city can explore, including the funding of a Section 115 pension trust.
Which is a separate action from consideration of a pension bond that we said we'd study.
Correct. So we'll go over all the various options. So there is little to no impact in the 17-18 budget. That's why the decision was to bring it as a standalone item. It will really impact fiscal year 18-19 and further.
Thank you.
This next slide represents the CIP and technology projects funded through developer impact fees that reside in the assigned fund balance. So these projects were previously presented to council on August 31st. There's no change here, so $689,000 will be funded to various CIP projects and $395,000 to fund various technology projects, bringing the total of developer impact fees to $1,084,000. Any questions on these projects?
More of a comment. If I recall, we pulled $250,000 roughly out of this list that was going to be used potentially for Rexham Park to get that committee's participation. Is that right, Greg?
I think it's coming from two sources, right? General fund and?
Yeah, it's a total of 250.
Yes, it was $50,000 from impact fees and $200,000 from general fund. And that was the construction of Acacia Park. And after staff had various discussions, the construction would not be able to start 17-18. That's why that 250 was pulled.
And the hockey rink is still on there because there's a safety issue there and it needs to be addressed quickly. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
So what I think, but there's still the 250, so I think our recommendation is that the Parks and Recs Commission review the help in the prioritization process of identifying where to, what to fund, what to use those funds on.
That was the question you gave us.
Yes, that is correct. And that $200,000 is here under Parks Facility Upgrades and Maintenance Council recommendation.
Yeah.
That's general fund.
That's general fund, correct. Okay, any further questions on this particular slide?
And then just, I believe we talked about it the last time, but there was no mention of maintenance for the pool, the plunge itself. I know did we have money set aside for that separately?
Well, no, Mayor, this does have budget set aside for that as far as additional funding above and beyond what.
Given its more recent past, do we have enough money set aside to sustain the pool, the plunge?
As far as I'm aware, yes. I don't know if there's anything else to add to that or.
We don't have money set aside for a catastrophic.
Not catastrophic, but obviously we've had to put, we've had some issues in the more recent past, so I just want to make sure we
can handle the duct tape and baling wire for another couple of years, right?
Public Works is responsible for the actual maintenance of the plunge, but as far as I know, nothing's changed as budget for maintenance of the aquatics facility. I know that we have a preliminary sort of Plan B in terms of plans and filter replacement ready to move forward with the County of Los Angeles Public Health Department if we needed to. Done some preliminary work on that, but nothing's been budgeted.
I mean, so are we confident that we have enough money to plug the holes if there's?
So there is budget set aside every year for that, and so far it's been adequate.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
You know, at mid-year, if there's some catastrophic event there, we can always address that.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions?
No.
So this slide represents the general fund reserve and economic uncertainty reserve over a 3-year period. I just wanted to put that history in there. The total fiscal year 17-18 reserves are increasing by $872,000 over the previous year, bringing the total reserves in 17-18 to $14.5 million. Okay, next is the CIP. So these projects were presented to council on August 31st. The only change from the August 31st meeting is the project description of pump station rehab. That's about midway to 3/4 of the way down on the list. It's $500,000 coming from the wastewater sewer fund. This was previously earmarked for lifeguard pump station. Council directed staff to look further into this project with the county and open up discussions. Public Works staff removed the lifeguard pump station and added a sewer pump station rehab within the city. So there's always an annual rehab of a pump station somewhere in the city, and they just reallocated that.
So are you saying that if we have to go back and plumb the lifeguard tower, that we'd use those funds for that? Or, because I don't think we've made much headway, frankly, with the county yet, have we, Greg?
Yeah. You know, as far as the timing of the project, whether it's, you know, done right away or done sometime throughout the mid or the end of the year, maybe that would be something that Public Works Director, Mr. Berkman, can address as far as what would actually be the use of those funds, whether it would come back and be the lifeguard pump station or just some other routine sewer pump station in the city.
Because the number was a lot larger, wasn't it, to?
No.
800 or 900 to?
We had 500,000 in the budget. I think the budget numbers remained the same.
Well, hopefully we'll get some help from LA County, who gets most of the benefit from the beach by way of getting the parking revenues from that beach, so.
If we can get those parking revenues.
Get the supervisor back over here, give her some kind of certificate or plaque, and then when she's here.
We could talk about it.
Funny enough, the email that we sent inviting her to get the plaque also mentioned the
Wanting to meet on this.
the bathroom, and they addressed the former and not the latter, so. We'll circle back on that.
Okay. Okay, this slide represents 2 staffing requests from other funds. Fire has a new management analyst position that they're requesting that is funded 100% through the new Coupa fees. So there is no general fund impact on this position in 17-18 or moving forward in the future. Public Works has $1,900 in the water sewer fund to reclassify the management analyst position to a senior management analyst position. Again, the other portion of that, the 7,800, is in the general fund. Any questions on this slide? So I'll provide a brief overview of the special revenue funds. This is a very busy slide. So I highlighted the areas of focus in blue. The total proposed budget for all special revenue funds, this is for operating and capital, is $4,374,375. There are two new funds for 1718. Those are highlighted off to the left. And towards the bottom, that is Measure M, Fund 127, and SB1, also known as the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017. That's Fund 128. I'll get into further detail on the very next slide on this. Any specific questions to any of these special revenue funds? So I added this slide to show the increase in transportation funding the city will be receiving over the next several years. In the current year, fiscal year 16-17, the city received a total of $1.1 million from all these revenue sources. In 17-18, we will be receiving $1.5 million, and that increases to $1.8 million in 4 years from now. This represents additional funding the city will be able to invest towards much-needed infrastructure projects. The main increase is due to the two revenue funds, the Measure M and SB1. So Measure M is a half-cent sales tax, LA County transportation sales tax, that was passed by voters in LA County in November of 2016 and became effective July 1st, 2017. And the city's share of that half-cent sales tax in 17-18 is just slightly over $241,000. SB1 was passed by the California State Legislature in April of 2017 and signed by the governor. This bill raised the excise and sales tax on gasoline as well as vehicle registration fees, and the additional revenue for 17-18 for the city is $94,000, and that increases to $300,000 in 4 years from now. So any specific questions on this slide?
Not much you can do about it anyhow.
Yeah, on that gas, it increases each year. Is it just those years, or does it go on forward?
So there's different stages of implementation. The increase in the excise tax and sales tax is effective, I believe, November 1st, 2017. And then the registration fees are implemented at some subsequent date. I believe it's in 2020. And there is a CPI factor attached to the excise tax. There's no sunset.
So 22, 23, if you continued this slide?
Those will continue to increase.
Okay.
By a CPI factor, yes.
Thanks.
Okay, the total proposed operating and capital budgets for the enterprise funds are $38.1 million. Most of this is coming from the water fund. The golf fund, again, as I mentioned before, assumes the status quo. If Topgolf project is approved at a subsequent council meeting, staff will come back and amend the budget at that time. The debt service fund, included in the proposed budget, is an allocation of $545,000 for the payment in principal of and interest on the Douglas Street gap closure project. So we have a loan to the state that we're paying off. The source of these funds to cover the debt obligation comes from traffic impact fees. This slide represents the internal service funds and the senior housing fund. I don't know if there's any specific questions on any of these specific funds. Okay, so to recap the proposed 17-18 city budget. Total revenues for all funds are $116.4 million. Total operating and capital budget for all funds is $130.3 million. General fund budget of $69.3 million. Those are the revenues. General fund expenditure budget of $72.4. Total CIP of $13.6 million for 17-18, and total technology projects of $3.5 million for 17-18.
So Joe, I know in the past we've talked about expenditures for like cars and equipment, if we could see a comprehensive plan at the beginning of the budget, so we don't have to come throughout the year piecemeal. When can we see that plan of where these expenditures are going to go toward, and so we can track it?
Sure. So in the published budget document, so you should have this folder that was put together for you right now. And the actual published document will have that insert in there.
Okay.
And it will be, everything will be explained as far as what is being allocated.
Is that what you want?
Can you remind us what the policy is in terms of, it's budgeted, but then you want to make a purchase, do a purchase order for a vehicle. How does that come before council, if at all?
So as part of revamping the existing purchasing policy, which staff has been working diligently on, we have an internal working group along with the city attorney that we've been working on this for several months now. We do have a draft version that will be handed out to department heads and the city manager for review and feedback. And then at that point, incorporate that feedback and then bring it to city council, probably second meeting in October. And that will really help streamline some of the current processes. So right now, the city manager's purchasing authority is only $25,000. And we did a survey out there. I think it was a total of about 70 cities. The average 40-70 cities was at $50,000 for the city manager. Most of the larger cities were obviously 100 to 200,000. Cities our size, again, the average was about 50,000. So that's part of what we're going to incorporate, and increasing that level will help streamline some of the processes. But just because you approve the budget does not mean that a specific contract is approved. So if there's a contract that exceeds, right now, something over 25,000, that has to be brought before city council.
Okay, thank you.
And then earlier we were talking about the commissions. As we start to purchase some of these equipment or do some of the things, since we have the environmental committee, if we could have them part of some of the process to vetting to ensure that we're making the right environmental decisions as well as fiscal decisions.
Yeah, so the Assistant City Attorney, David King, has been working diligently with that environmental committee, and he's also incorporating a component of that into the new proposed purchasing policy.
Perfect.
So staff recommendation and next steps. Staff recommending City Council approve the proposed 17-18 budget. And next steps, the staff will come back to City Council in October to discuss implementing various CalPERS pension solutions, as well as discussing various fiscal policy options on revenue measures for City Council consideration. So if you have any questions or comments.
I have one comment. I know that we're looking at several revenue opportunities, but there was one mentioned that we spent a fair amount of time talking about, where there is, I think, conjecture that LA County or the city, can't remember which, might be moving to a 10% sales tax. I guess that'd be the county, right?
Right.
And that if they did that, we would lose our ability. Right now we're at 9.25. Is that right?
We're going to 9.5, I believe it's October 1st or November 1st.
Okay. But those 50 basis points, if we wanted to, I guess what I'm trying to suggest is,
we beat them to the punch.
Could we beat them to the punch? And could we institute something that is only enacted if LA County opts to go to 10%, so that the city could get that differential as opposed to the county?
But you wouldn't impose it unless the county made a move to impose, and then you'd block them and keep the money locally.
Correct.
Instead of them getting that.
I'm getting the head shaking. I think she said, because we haven't put it on the agenda yet, right? Okay.
No. Go ahead.
Not that? Okay.
Yeah, so there's that 5 basis points that you talk about, and it would be a general election. As soon as would want this to be a special tax, and I'm sorry, a general tax. So your next opportunity to do that would be in the April 2018 election, and assuming the county doesn't do something before that, there is the potential of putting something on to be first in line, if you will, for that, those 5 basis points. Would have to be very carefully worded. I'm not certain that having it triggered only if their tax pass works. I think it'd have to give the council the ability to implement it if they were to put a tax on the ballot.
Okay, but so that is a possibility that we could consider. We just can't discuss it now, Tracy, or is it?
You can discuss
Okay, sorry, Dr.
What's
Brand.
the value of 0.5%?
Sure. So if we can go back to this slide, the transportation-related funding. And if we go to Measure M, and that's that new half-cent sales tax implemented by the county, passed by county voters. So we're getting $241,500 for 17-18 on a half-cent tax. If that was a half-cent local sales tax, that value would be $6 million to the city.
So it's worth it.
That's a population-based district.
Yeah.
That's so 10% of our general fund budget, roughly. That's big. So how do we, sounds like time is of the essence. How do we consider this would be a huge education effort, I think, for the residents? Historically, tax measures don't go well. And like we said, something like this would only go into effect, assuming we get the language right, if the county voted to raise theirs. So how can we go about this in a timely manner so we don't miss the window here? Mark?
The materials, this is rough estimate, but it's probably pretty close, is probably the first week in January, everything would be due to the county. That's generally the time frame. Would like to have it done sooner or before that so that we're not struggling at the end to get the verbiage right and whatnot, but that would be the deadline to get to the county, the document, to put it on the ballot.
Are there any instances where this has occurred throughout the county where somebody's passed a local tax, not collected it, and waited on the county to pass a tax like they did in the last 6 months or so?
I'm not aware of one. I don't know if you are, Joe.
This is a city where big ideas take off. And I'm not going to take credit for this idea. Somebody whispered in my ear on this one. So but it's a good idea. Maybe it was you, Joe.
There's Joe.
Was it Joe?
No.
I don't know, Dr. Brand, maybe.
Somebody anyway, whoever did, I think it's a good one.
Definitely should
Okay, so
consider while we have the opportunity, because that's some serious money, and if you can campaign it so that people realize they're going to pay it to either the county or they're going to pay it here, they're going to want to pay it here if they have that choice. I know they'd rather not pay it either place, but don't have that choice.
Right, so with passage of Measure M, residents here and businesses are still paying that half-cent tax, but it's not
Coming here.
Yeah. It's being allocated out to the county.
So what do you recommend, Mr. Hensley?
I think staff had some various tax ideas that they wanted to propose to council. So perhaps either one of the next 2 meetings, I would no later than the second meeting in October, I think it'd be a good idea to bring those ideas to council and get some direction so that to the extent the council wants to do something, my office has sufficient time to put the documents together.
Great. And then are we also in that first or second meeting in October talking about addressing some of these pension expenses more aggressively?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other thoughts, comments, concerns? What do you need from us, Mr. Lilio? Oh, Mike.
We need a motion to approve the
Actually,
budget.
I think there's a public hearing on this.
Yeah.
I do have.
This is a public hearing.
I do have one quick comment. So in the budget resolution, under section 10C, we're asking that language to be deleted.
And actually, Joe and I were to be deleted. Exchanged some emails today about this. I would just say to delete all of section 10. It's not necessary. It's somewhat in conflict with our purchasing ordinance and our code. So it just talks about where the the question that was asked by the mayor that Joe asked, I'm sorry, the mayor pro tem, that was answered by Joe about where the authority lies and how the process works for purchasing is set forth in section 10, and it's really not quite accurate. It's not necessary in this document. We would just delete it from the resolution.
Okay, where would I interject that deletion of?
Well, when we get to the resolution, after the public hearing, I'll read that into the record as part of the resolution that would be proposed.
Okay. Suzanne knew which meeting to miss with all these readings of the. This is a time and place hereto fixed for a public hearing. City clerk, was proper notice of the hearing given in a timely manner?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Has any written communication been received regarding this public hearing?
No, sir.
Thank you. Public hearing is now open. And, sorry, we did it backwards. All right, I don't see any public comments, so we're going to motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 4-0. Any council discussion?
No, we've had our questions answered along the way.
Yeah, I just want to compliment you, Joe Lilio in particular, and all the staff and department heads across the city behind you for the way this 2017-18 budget process has been managed. I think it's the best I've seen here, and this is my 6th go-round on the city budget. And just think you've been very open and transparent about it. You've listened to feedback that you've received. Your presentations have been clear and really appreciated by this council member.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second that.
Me too.
Thank you. Okay, city attorney will read the resolution by title only.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, a resolution adopting the 2017-18 final operating and capital improvement budget and the 2017-2018 appropriations limit for the city of El Segundo, with the change that I read into the record of deleting section 10, which would then just renumber the successive sections after that, is ready for adoption.
May I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
4-0, all right. Okay, under unfinished business, consideration and possible action to update, replace, modernize the city seal and/or approve a new city logo. Fiscal impact is 0 up to $84,850. And we have Ms. Taggle that's going to present. Welcome.
We're still awake.
I'm here to present about the city seal under unfinished business items, and a little bit of background. I'm going to give you staff research overview. At the June 20th City Council meeting, you gave us direction, staff direction, to do research about the city seal and the replacement or modernization of the city seal. So, and you asked us to bring it back here, hence the item on the agenda tonight. And so we did some staff research on the history, we did community survey, did some research about other city seal and logo info, and then we also got department heads input, including the impact and cost, including city clerks and city treasurers departments. So a little bit of history first, compliments of the Friends of the Library, most especially Mrs. Brand and Library Director Deborah Brighton. In 1917, the first original city seal was adopted, and as you can see, it's represented, is reflective of the city at the time as industry. In 1952, a new city seal was adopted, and additional design elements were added, like homes, palm tree. There's an airplane to show that there's a growing aviation industry. There's a refinery in the background. In 1983, there are 3 different seals floating around. So City council at the time expressed interest in changing the city seal, and then they realized there were 3 that were floating around, and the bottom 2 were unauthorized. And so what ended up happening, instead of revising, they just created an ordinance that regulated and restricted the use of the 2 unauthorized seal. And the one on the bottom right actually has the Chamber of Commerce name on it as well. If memory serves me well, it was actually on a police car. And then fast forward to today, we have the current seal, which is the 3rd image right there. And that's the current official seal to date. And then this year is our centennial birthday. So the Centennial Committee created a centennial logo, which is the farthest right there. And it's to be used all year round on all centennial events and centennial materials. So moving on to the survey results, we conducted a survey via SurveyMonkey, and unfortunately we have like 17,000 residents and 80,000 daytime population, and only 283 participated. And this is with us sending it out via Nixle. We had it on Facebook, we had it on all our different websites with lots of hundreds of views, and we even sent it out under our city manager's message in the newsletter that went out to like 7,000 distribution lists for our newsletter, direct to their inbox. But anyway, so the 283 that did participate, a third, as you could see, it's split. A third said, yes, let's keep the centennial logo. Another third said, don't change the city seal. We don't want to spend the money. And then another third said, neither, let's create a new design. And out of the 283, there were 58 comments, and they were all different opinions about what they wanted to change with the seal or the logo. So it's like, hey, let's add Mayberry by the Sea, or hey, let's make the Centennial Sea a circle, seal a circle, and add this or remove this, and it was all different. What was very common were 13 comments, and it was mostly about cost concern. And then the other research was, what were the other cities doing? And what I discovered is that when city council wanted, or the city wanted to, if they expressed interest in changing, modernizing, or replacing a city seal, they were faced with uproar or resistance is probably a better word. So as a result, they ended up just adding logos instead of switching their seal. And what I discovered was that the city seal is usually, they would use it for official business use, and then they would use the logo for events or promotional and marketing materials, and the city clerk would be the custodian for the city seal, and then the city manager would be the custodian for the logo, so that's easier and faster access. And then there were some cities that I found, but it wasn't to replace the seal or modernize it. It was to remove things such as like, Confederate flag or, a church symbol. So that's what I discovered. And then we also asked the executive leadership input. So all the department heads provided their impact and cost input, including the city clerk's office, city treasurer's office. And this is 85,000 is just the surface level. A couple of departments have unknown under their cost, and this is just a rough estimate. We don't know what we don't know might come up. And then also I kind of just narrowed down what the different comments were, and it was the gist of it is there's cost concern, there's branding concern, there's citywide priority and limited resources. This is not under the strategic planning KPIs, or the different committees and commissions and boards across the city. They probably all have their different wish lists, CPAC, Technology Committee, so this is not yet on any of those. There was, sure, there's interest in like a new and different than the Centennial Seal design and the city seal, but if we do have the budget and the time and the resources, we would love for it to be thoughtful and thorough study and evaluation. And then another sentiment was, let's have 2 one official seal, and one promotional logo. So as a result of all the research and the cost concern, the community input, department input, citywide staff input, and trying to appease everybody, keeping the Centennial logo and then also the city seal. So staff recommendations is to maintain the current city seal, which is the one above, and then add a city logo based on the Centennial logo design for marketing and promotional use, and then create an update to regulate both. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
We may have a couple. Thank you very much. Good presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation, all the research that went into it, behind it, and thanks for getting the Exhibit A and Exhibit B back here. We can kind of really compare quite clearly between the two. On the recommendation there at the end, there'd be some cost to have the two systems going, to add the second system as a marketing promotional tool. There'd be some costs there, I assume also, just like if we make the change. But this could be feathered or rolled in over a period of 1 to 3 years. So, because I don't think we had any money in that budget we just approved for the logo, and I didn't intend for it to, cost money for the city. I just think we got a really nice logo here for the Centennial, designed by a firm here in town, and the Centennial Committee has been very happy with it. It's much more modern than the seal we have, in that we have everything from the blue butterfly and the satellite and sunshine and the waves and everything. I did speak to the History Committee about this.
How did he leave out the refinery? I don't understand that.
No, that's in there,
I know,
on the left, yeah.
Yeah, you just left it out though.
Oh. And I spoke to the Arts and Cultural Committee, and spoke to one other committee.
Centennial.
Centennial, of course, right, about this. So, I think most people don't care about this, don't know what the logo is perhaps why you got such a low turnout on the survey, even though you did everything you could to elicit responses. So I would like to see us break away and make the change, the new, but then phase that in over time so it doesn't create a problem when we're doing a new car or buying something. We just bring it in as time goes. It's somewhat like the change in the highway name is taking some time to implement, and eventually it'll get there. So that's what I was thinking, but it's up to council. This was the year to raise it. We're not going to do it now. We're probably never going to do it. And I've talked to the public safety associations about it, and they basically have no love for the current seal. They don't think it's very pretty, but don't care that much about what we do here on it, around it anyway.
Mrs. Perstuck or Mr. Dugan?
I like the idea of, keeping the official seal and then using the Centennial logo as a marketing tool or a for any kind of communications or flyers or something like that.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
Yeah. I think the staff recommendation was to do that, to maintain the seal and then use the logo as needed, and it gave ownership to it, and the logo can change, right, as time goes on, and the city manager owns the logo, I guess, so I'm okay with that. I'd rather follow what the recommendation of the staff is on that one.
I move approval of staff recommendation then to resolve this and move us forward.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you. Nice report. Come back again and see us. Make a report.
Thanks.
I do agree, Boiling Point Creative did a great job.
Yeah.
The logo is very good.
We'll have to alter that a little on the bottom there with the years, but that wouldn't, make sense
With
in the
Centennial,
future.
right.
Yeah, Centennial.
Okay, D, reports of committees, commissions, and boards. I don't think we have any, do we? We have consent. Consent agenda, yes, but nothing on
That's
D,
next,
right?
no.
Okay. Any polls from the consent agenda?
Poll number 11?
Okay, number 11. Any other polls? Okay, do I have a motion to approve items 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, and 14?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0. Okay, Dr. Brandt, could you please read item 11?
Yes, item 11 is consideration and possible action to authorize the city manager to execute an amendment to license agreement number 4698 in a form approved by the city attorney. This is with the Segundo Nursery School Co-op to operate a nonprofit preschool at the clubhouse building for an additional year at no cost, not even the $1 Mike paid for them this last year. So they started in 1947. So they are really, really an ongoing concern here. It was a pleasure to be a part of this back in the 70s when our kids were young. Mayor wrote to me today and asked to have a question answered, and that's around the participation of adults in the preschool. She'd like to know, and she said she brought this up last year when they came out of here with an extra year, if the parents can be replaced by a grandparent. The policy has been no. They're down to 10 families, according to what Sarah Whalen told us, and they were fortunate enough to replace the teacher on short notice. But the model doesn't work in 2017 like it worked in 1974. And so if staff could ask the co-op people if they've altered that policy. They said they would consider altering it, but I don't know if it happened. And Suzanne Fuentes wants to know, and for single parents everywhere, having some flexibility in who can give time to the school's well-being is important, and I think it's going to be important for the school to be able to continue into the future and be viable. So just want to register that, ask staff for that, and I'm fine with the item and move approval of it.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0. All right, let's see. Reports. City Manager.
Mayor Pro Tem, Council, two quick reports on items that Council asked staff to look into. First being Campus El Segundo Turf Project. I'd like Meredith Pettit to come up and provide information on the status of that project. There is a delay, obviously, and the completion of that. We'll ask Meredith to talk, and Ken, if necessary, to speak to what's caused that delay and where that project's going.
Good evening. Yes, Campus El Segundo is coming along. If you've driven past it, you would see some progress over the last couple of weeks. As Greg mentioned, there was a delay. After the removal of the existing turf, it was discovered that the soil conditions underneath were potentially going to cause some issues with reinstalling the new turf. And Ken can go into more detail about it, but basically we were left with a few options. And that was to anything from doing nothing all the way up to basically mixing in cement into the soil to make it hard so that they wouldn't have compaction issues. And that was going to cost, I think the highest option was about $500,000. And obviously a couple months of extra work. So Public Works worked very closely with the contractor and developed a plan to let it set for 3 weeks so that the soil could dry out, and see if that was an option that would work and help with those compaction issues. And that worked. And that's why we were delayed about 3 weeks, where you saw very minimal progress over at the the facility. If you have more questions about that specific detail, I think Ken can probably address those better than I can. But as of right now, the west field is almost complete. Starting tomorrow, they will be installing the infill material. And today, they started laying the turf on the east field. Laying the turf and stitching in the permanent lines and the permanent logos takes about 5 to 6 working days. And then the infill installation on each field typically takes about 3 to 4 days per field. But because of the compaction concerns underneath, they are going to take it a little bit slower than usual, and also take a little bit longer than normal, just to reduce the weight of the equipment that's being placed out onto the fields. And so right now we don't have a specific date. The engineers continue to make site visits multiple times a day, and we are anticipating to be open by mid-October, but we did learn today that they have increased the number of crew members out there, so we hope to make up some time for that. And anything else? I can answer any questions. I know our sports groups have been very flexible and patient during the process, and AYSO has definitely had to make some schedule changes, reduce the number of practices this season, which was unanticipated. We were hoping that that wouldn't happen. But on the other hand, Little League and the softball leagues have been graciously sharing their space. We've opened up some additional field space in the outfields of the softball field and Stevenson Field at Rec Park, which are traditionally baseball and softball fields. So we're doing the best that we can, and AYSO has, like I said, been very patient throughout the process, and I want to make sure that we thank them for continuing cooperation.
Thanks, Meredith. I have a question on the date. Mid-October, you said the Westfield's almost complete, so are we going to be able to get on? Is mid-October for the Westfield only, or is that?
That would be full completion. I think that, in an ideal world, we would be able to have some activity on the Westfield. It will be completed before the Eastfield, but I think that will depend on really the type of equipment that's out there being used and the access in and out of the facility, and making sure that it's safe to do that. And I don't have the answer right now. Okay.
Carol, did you have a question?
I just wanted a question. So the issue with the soil was it was wet, correct? Is there a drainage issue, or was that because we had so much rain last year? What are we doing to ensure that doesn't happen again as we lay this new turf?
Yeah, I don't know if there's an answer to that. I know from our side, from a playability side and drainage, we've never had any issues with water not draining off of the field. So I think we think it's just from being covered in a plastic material for 10 years. And, just having, it's a clay soil under there from what I understand. So I don't know if you have a answer to why.
Couldn't have said all that better myself, so good job, thanks. So with research on every capital project, we look at every project individually, but in general, there's a level of research and investigations that you do to try and determine the conditions that you're going to find in a project. Try and go in with all the information that we possibly can. In this case, to speak to lessons learned, there was nothing in our files or evidence in the field that would lend us to believe there was going to be wet soil out there, even with one of the heaviest rainy seasons we've ever had in our history. I was out there, and staff has been very diligent working with the contractor. And when we, as Meredith said, when you have a membrane, it's basically a sealed field, subsurfaces, there's really no way for the water to get out. When I was out there, there were sub-drain systems, and there were cracks in them. And surely after, 1995, I think it was, general use or construction has caused cracks. Maybe that was an issue and caused, with the rains, more water to be there. And with our construction right after this heavy rainy season, perhaps that was an issue, but nothing that we could have seen in advance of the project. However, going forward, we're being very careful to make sure all the notes are in the files to tell our successors that, hey, when we did this project, these are the issues that we encountered. So when folks see this, even though there might not be any evidence of this in the field, and hopefully there's not the next time we have to do this, at least the files will show the issues so we can have the idea in advance and maybe do some investigations to make sure we're ready for this better next time.
Okay, I got a question about, I guess my question relates more to best case scenario when we started this project. When would the field have been ready? Best case scenario.
With the contract, it was September 20th.
Okay, reason I bring it up is that AYSO starts in earnest mid-September. And I know in any construction project, there's contingencies left and right, and you typically look at a project plan as a kind of a moving thing. I guess personally, I just would have maybe asked that we not, if we thought there was any risk of it not hitting that deadline, maybe push out the sports programs a whole season. Because right now everybody's kind of waiting, and we have a situation I just learned about recently. We probably, what I heard, and I don't know if this is fact but is that we probably won't start games at Brett Field and then move halfway through to campus midway through the season. And that was from a referee, like the head referee of AYSO. So, yeah, you'd think. But I mean, we were really pushing the envelope in terms of viability of this project coming in on time, it sounds like. And yeah.
If I may, the bids were opened April 25th, I think, and if council will recall, there was a bid protest.
That's right.
So there was a period of time that we were trying to resolve that and brought that to council with the official contract. We certainly did try, given that date, to make sure we had a buffer for contingencies to meet the schedule, and unfortunately, it didn't work out, and it did bump up.
Anything else we can learn, like in terms of what we maybe could have done differently, knowing that we've got this huge aquatics facility coming online, we got Top Golf. So just from a large project standpoint, is there anything else we could do differently, or is it?
I think for the means and methods that we thought about for this specific turf replacement project, I think it all proceeded according to plan until we had the two things, the bid protest with the schedule. That's something that in cooperation with the city attorney, we were looking at and thought we had all our bids and specs properly amended as the bid advertisement was out there in accordance with public contract code and our municipal code. And then again, the unforeseen conditions is something every public works agency battles with everywhere. The balance of what's the cost benefit to how much effort you put into looking at subsurface conditions in every project versus we understand the lay of the land, and when, as engineers, we look around and see what evidence we have of issues and try and get those into the project specifications to make sure they're in the contractor's bid and we have those costs and schedules up front. So it's a balancing act that I think reasonably we and staff approached correctly in this case.
Okay. I'm thinking too, I know Dr. Brand wants to say something. I'm thinking about the project at Da Vinci and how that one has unforeseen delays because of a potential bid protest or some kind of fiasco between a sub and a contractor. And for me, I guess it would just be maybe under promise, over deliver. I mean, all of us in this city, we got AYSO like chomping on the bit to start their season. If we think there's any chance that something's going to go wrong, punt until the next season and let them figure out the field space. That'd be my ask, I guess. Anyway, Dr. Brand.
So, Ken, as you probably know, just down the street on Douglas, similar conditions at the Weisburn High School site where that was pretty much caused by the heavy rainfall through the winter, and so that slowed them down. But the main delay there was the electrical contractor, Gould Electric out of San Diego, went bankrupt and had to be replaced by another electrical contractor who had to repair some of the sloppy work towards the last month Gould was in there. And then just the sheer volume of the project was huge and unprecedented to convert an industrial building into public schools. So the report we heard at Government Affairs Committee yesterday is they're hoping to move in the first 10 days of November down the street. But, you know, the adobe out there, and there's less of it and more sand as you move west, but I contended with it really bad in 2002 at the construction of the Anza School. That maintains the water. It clings, and you just can't get it dried out. So it's not as much clay as you find in Hawthorne to the east, but it's in that transition zone there, and that plays havoc. So in your case, you had a covered site, where in their case, it wasn't covered, it was open, and they still had issues with water on the site, and they couldn't use it for the aquatic center.
All right, any other questions? No?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your help. Okay, City Attorney.
Yeah, one more.
Mayor Pro Tem, one other item
Oh, I'm
quickly.
sorry.
Just to follow up on Clutters Park and issues around Clutters Park. Council previously asked staff to conduct a community meeting and find out more about the issues that are going out in that area with respect to parking and people using the park. Listen to the community about potential solutions and then work through some of those solutions. So a community meeting was held on August 21st. It was well attended, both by staff and the departments and by the community. So led really by the police department. We also had Parks and Rec, Public Works, City Manager's office in attendance. We had about 40 of the neighbors in attendance, some of the folks that you met tonight. D.R. Horton did come up at that meeting, primarily around parking and the impacts on parking, but also around construction noise. But I did want to ask Chief Whalen to come up and speak to what the police department has done and what is in the works. We're certainly not, we haven't resolved the issues yet. It's going to be an ongoing, I think, set of solutions. We have a meeting set up interdepartment meeting set up with LAX representatives tomorrow to talk about some of the employee parking issues and hopefully continue to work towards resolving some of those. There are some things that we can do in the right-of-way that Public Works can take the lead on, and there is the enforcement and policing issues. So, Chief, could you speak to what the police department's doing?
Absolutely, sir. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Boyles, City Council. As the city manager indicated, I feel we had a very successful meeting on August 21st with several of the residents in attendance, and it was many issues that got brought to our attention. I'd summarize them as parking concerns, traffic, driving in and around their neighborhood, cutting through their streets, that type of thing. Persons committing illegal activity, ostensibly that are there to use the park and then secrete themselves into the darkened neighborhoods to do whatever it is they're going to do. Like I mentioned, the park itself was a concern to some. Trash in and around the area. People got into discussions about people working at LAX and cutting down through the slopes and walking across Imperial Highway. And then there was a contingent there that was complaining about the D.R. Horton issue. So specifically in regards to what the police department can impact, even leading up to that event and then post that event, we've been doing extra patrols out in the neighborhood for two reasons. One is really to try to validate what the concerns are that the neighbors have in an effort to corroborate what they're seeing. We've had, from our uniformed patrol officers, over 80 patrol checks where we've actually noted it out, not just driving through, but where we've gone and put ourselves out there out of service. Haven't had any arrests out of the area. Have come in contact with many people who don't live there. That's been obvious. We've even gone so far as in the evening hours and daytime hours to run license plates to see kind of what ratio is residents to out of area people. And overnight, the majority are residents of Sheldon, specifically Sheldon Street. There's still a good number of people from outside the city overnight hours, and then it actually flips during the daytime. During the daytime hours, the vast majority of cars parked on the street are from out of the area. We've also done undercover patrols up there. Obviously, if you are driving up in a marked police car, people can see you and drive off, and absent a good reason to stop them, you might have to let them go on their way. We have done undercover patrols up there and haven't encountered any illegal activity. Make sure that I'm covering everything else that we have. That's it from a police department standpoint. Now, the future meeting, I know on September 21st, there is a meeting scheduled with the airport and the various stakeholders from the city side who are part of this team addressing these issues. A huge problem, I'd say probably if I could summarize one common problem, because there were many, one common problem seems to be airport workers who are parking in and around that area and then going to their work and perhaps not taking care of that neighborhood like a resident would, whether it's leaving trash behind or things of that nature. So I know that there's the city manager's office and others who will be part of that meeting with the department going forward. I'd be happy to answer any questions about our actions towards.
Any questions or comments from the council?
Comments. Sounds like you did a license plate survey that's going to be I guess, part of a survey to determine if we have a problem out there already done, right? So we've got data in our hands already here, so.
$50,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we could get that money sent to the police department, so.
This problem there on Imperial, does it go enough east so that it gets into the dog park too, or is this west of the dog parks?
It's that whole area.
The whole area, yeah. Because I get my neighbors want to take their dog to the dog park. They get over there and they can't park, and so they have to go back to Elm Street or wherever they came from. And they're not happy. They can't use the nice parks that we've got over there for the dogs. And why can't they? Because the places are being taken by people who work across the street. It's just like crazy. So I'm sure what you said there about finding mostly out-of-resident license plates in the daytime is their problem. Yeah. Thank you.
Carol?
So at what point are we going to talk about some solutions, or, maybe permitting? Are we going to continue to do this research and then, but I mean, we've been hearing it now for quite a while. So, and I know, do we want to institute a permit?
Well, let me address some of the issues. I think we're going to work with LAX to see if we can address the employer issues. We have removed some red curbing out there that was brought to our attention, that there was old red curbing from the old school site, so we've increased some parking. We suggested to the residents, the way our process works for permit parking, and we suggested this to the residents as a possible solution or an incremental first step, is if we can establish a permit parking district out there, limit parking to residents only, see how that works, and if there is still a parking problem after that, then we can consider something more drastic. The way our ordinance reads and this works is it's a permit system is driven by a democratic process. The residents need to do a survey, and 55% of those people in the area need to sign it to indicate that they're in support. So we have suggested to the residents that they start that process. It traditionally is a resident-driven process to get those signatures.
Can you address, I know some of the residents, I actually met with one today, have asked for street closures or one-way only access out of Sheldon. Like there's a block on Sepulveda in Manhattan Beach where they have planters blocking access to a street, for example. So just some other more drastic measures and just the feasibility of those potential options.
That was those types of measures were discussed, and I think your word was, the term you used was appropriate. Those are more drastic measures because they have other implications as far as studies and costs and potentially other impacts on other streets. And the staff recommendation was that we try the permit parking system and some of these other things first to see if they address the issue. The other item that came up was potentially building fencing across some of those trails that are being used for safety purposes, really. Not that we want to fence in the city, but that we don't want people crossing a 4-lane, 50-mile-an-hour roadway without using a crosswalk and doing it safely. We're getting some pricing. We're getting bids for fences.
Walls.
Pedestrian safety devices to be built in those areas. But to your point, Mayor Pro Tem, blocking a street does necessitate the need for a study to be done to figure out where those vehicles will go if the street is blocked. It sometimes creates issues with diverting traffic to somebody else's street and just moving the issue or moving the problem.
And that's what we found in Walnut, at the end of Walnut and Sepulveda. The traffic just went to Sycamore.
Well, you know, so in our discussions, I'm convinced that we've got an airport parking problem that we need to resolve. People are working on that. If we get rid of that problem, the rest of this thing may solve itself here. So, you know, Chief, you've done a great job of, you know, doing some preliminary investigation into assessing what the real problem is out there. We have to get the airport to believe there's a problem. So they want to pay 50 grand to do a study. He's already got one done here. That, you know, that we're convinced that the problem is them. So that's where our focus, in my opinion, that's where our focus ought to be, is getting rid of those issued parking spots right now. Get rid of those people that are working over there parking here. And when that happens, the rest of this may clean itself up and go away. We don't have to spend money on walls, fences, whatever you want to call them, and do all kinds of, you know, restrictive roadways. So, Chief, thanks for doing all the front end work here. I appreciate it. I think it's, you know, we need to work the airport now is what we need to do. So
Yeah, and why don't we take the chief's survey and sell it to
I was
Lala
gonna say,
for
give them 50
$50,000?
grand.
They
Yeah.
could build a
Yeah,
parking structure for
45.
$50,000.
Give them 45.
There you go.
But it's amazing. So
I agree that there's a major issue with employing. You can see it. I mean, anecdotally, you see them running across the street. It's crazy. Safety issue. And we are addressing
the
that.
trash.
And the trash as well. The point you mentioned though about the illegal activity and the evening activities and some of the stuff that I've heard from the residents, I'm guessing isn't just, although there's a significant employee parking issue. I think there's also concern about what is the purpose, the function, the value of that park. Who uses the park? Is the park El Segundo residents mostly or not? And do we really want to continue to have that park there? I'm just speaking the concern that I've heard expressed from the residents that live there. And if there isn't a value, and we've already addressed this other major contributor, which is the LAX parking, employee parking situation, maybe we ought to consider something else. I don't know, huge trees blocking the view. And what's LAX's perspective on that vantage point of looking at those planes coming and going all day long? And I don't know, it's just, I think there are multiple issues at hand here, and the employee parking is probably the most significant at this point. But the residents that I've talked to have expressed concern about, to quote them, the element that Clutter Park brings, and even talking about some of the stuff that's left behind in their neighborhood when these cars go. So
We've heard that. We've heard about it, and that's primarily why I want to do the undercover patrols, because people, when they see police cars, won't usually engage in that type of activity. Unfortunately, I feel terrible for them because I've seen or heard the stories. We just haven't been able to witness that ourselves. But we certainly would take extreme enforcement action if.
Is a camera useful either as a deterrent or as potentially useful in the event of some illicit activity?
A camera could be. Kind of along those lines, we did deploy our lighting trailer up there to light up the area to try to discourage criminal activity from occurring, and maybe that's why we haven't been able to witness it. That could have displaced that. With a camera, we would have to find one that had the optics and clarity and everything like that. We found, not necessarily there, actually I think there was one instance there with a home surveillance camera, and it saw a car, but it couldn't pick up enough information for us to work with. In fact, in one particular instance, there was a car with people in it, and one of our police cars drove down the street. They had ducked down. Our officers didn't see them, and then the car drove off right away. So, but we, viewing the tape afterwards, couldn't see any license plate, or we just kind of had a vague image of a car. So it depends. Depends on that, perhaps.
So you're going to meet with LAX. That'll address the issues that are very obvious and evident to us. But is there another step that we could take to further engage the residents over there to seek some other solutions, Greg, or what do you recommend at this point?
Council, this was a report out item by the city manager and not really agendized. I would recommend that either the next meeting or the meeting after that be agendized for staff to come back with recommendations so council can have a thorough discussion and give direction about what you want done.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Alrighty, was that it, Greg? Okay, City Attorney.
Yes, just briefly, want to report on status of our Topgolf and the amendment number 3. Unfortunately, Chevron and CenterCall and Topgolf have not come to agreement yet agreed on the form of their agreement, and so it's not clear to me that we'll have that amendment in place prior to your next meeting. We are in contact with them almost daily, trying to push this along with regard to that amendment, but we don't have it in place yet. But CenterCal speaks very hopefully that they'll have it the next few days. So I'll let the council know that. Could change the timing of what occurs at the next meeting. I don't have anything else today.
Okay, thank you. City Clerk. Okay, thank you. City Treasurer's not here. Let's see, let's go to reports from City Council members. Dr. Brand.
Last week I had the opportunity to attend the League of California Cities conference in Sacramento this year, and enjoyed that on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And Friday night, I had an opportunity, my third one, to visit Topgolf's facility in Roseville. So it was a very productive week, and brought back some materials from the conference to share with you and with staff. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Perstuck.
So I just wanted to give an update. At the last council meeting, we assigned myself and Mr. Dugan to talk to Topgolf and for the negotiations. So there's been some activity there. We've met with Richard Lundquist. Some discussions have been taking place, and they're ongoing.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Dugan.
I'd like to apologize to the Hyperion group last week. I missed the meeting because I just didn't get to it. Somehow it missed me on the agenda of my phone, and my wife hit me up at 7 o'clock. You have a meeting at 6. Are you going? And I go, well, I missed it. So I wanged out. I apologize to the Hyperion group. They've been doing a very good job of responding to us, and they've been making some great strides over there and improving. So I'll have to make it up to them somehow, but I apologize for missing that one.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dugan. I have a couple quick things. Imperial Highway, some of you may have noticed that there's been progress underway both from our Parks and Rec department, but also from the City of LA. And we talked about this at the last meeting, just how it's in such dire shape. And we got some help from some stakeholders in surrounding communities. Actually, Lucy Hahn, who's president of Friends of the Jungle in Playa del Rey, jumped on the opportunity to essentially rattle the cage of a lot of different department heads in the City of LA, and they came out very promptly and made some progress. It's a temporary solution. We've been talking as a council about more of a permanent solution to address the trees, the weeds, the trash, the median, the lack of signage and marquee coming into the city on Imperial, and have talked about forming a task force of sorts that could be either community-led or certainly with volunteers from the community. So more to come on that. Went to the grand opening or the reception of ESMOA. They have a great new exhibit that's in partnership with the Getty. Help me out, Carol. Yeah, what's the
Standard Time?
Pacific Standard Time. They do it every couple of years, I believe, and great exhibit. Highly recommend you go and buy there. And also went to the Children's Auxiliary Hospital fundraiser at International Gardens this weekend. That was great. They raised a ton of money. And most importantly, just want to thank my wife for 14 years of marriage, tolerating me for 14 years and 20 years together tonight. And don't tell her, but we're going away on a trip tomorrow morning. I haven't told her where we're going, but I got the tickets. We're flying out of here. for a couple days. Okay, so that's it for council member comments. Any public communication? Okay, Jack did leave. He got tired of us. All right, on to a more somber note. I have a memorial to read. Adjournment for September 19th City Council meeting. And as many of you know, Kelly McDowell, former mayor of the city of El Segundo, died recently. And he died, Mayor Hobart Kelliston, Kelly McDowell III, died unexpectedly Saturday, the 9th of September from natural causes. He was only 64. Kelly, his friends and family called him, practiced law in Southern California for 30 years. To actually use Kelly on a couple occasions in some business transactions. He was very good. During that time, Kelly fell in love with the city of El Segundo, where he first served as a councilman starting in 1998. Kelly was elected by his colleagues to serve as mayor for 3 successive terms in 2004, 2006, and again in 2008. Kelly retired in 2010 after 12 years of public service. While serving as mayor, Kelly also wrote for the El Segundo Herald on wide-ranging topics such as astronomy and pets, but never politics. During his tenure as mayor, Kelly's interest, impact, and accomplishments stretched far beyond our city's limits on many key local, regional, and statewide matters of interest, ranging from environmental to business and economic. Kelly McDowell was instrumental in settling the Los Angeles International Airport environmental litigation concerning the airport master plan against the city of LA and LAWA, LAX, whereas the principal strategist and negotiator for the petitioners engaged in direct negotiations with Mayors Hahn and Villaraigosa, resulting in a breakthrough settlement in December 2005. As part of that landmark settlement, Mayor McDowell negotiated the allocation and payment of $250 million of LAWA money to sound insulate all eligible homes in neighboring jurisdictions, including $70 million for El Segundo. Kelly also played a critical leadership role in the successful regional effort to retain the LA Air Force Base in El Segundo, thereby preserving over 50,000 jobs in LA County alone. Those efforts included leading the military's first ever land for facilities swap with a private developer, using no taxpayer money, which resulted in the construction of the state-of-the-art Space and Missile Systems Center. As a direct result of Kelly's pro-business leadership and proactive economic development approach, the city of El Segundo was selected by the LA County Economic Development Corp as the first ever winner of the Most Business-Friendly City Eddie Award in LA County. Kelly will further be recognized as leaving his mark on the community by spearheading the effort to obtain a $10 million low-interest loan from California State Infrastructure Bank with a 2-week federal federally mandated time frame, thereby permitting critically needed federally funded Douglas Street roadway extension project to proceed. I think that one's almost paid down entirely, isn't it? That was a while ago. In his many regional leadership roles as president of the Independent Cities Association, chairman of the South Bay Cities Council of Governments governing board, chairman of the Sanitation District, Kelly provided exceptional leadership and proved to be an invaluable and consistent representative of the community of El Segundo and the South Bay. He also served as a chairman of the Consortium of Cities. In that position, he championed the novel political idea of bundling development projects of numerous municipalities into a coherent initiative. This provided for comprehensive, coordinated planning, resulting in reduced costs. After retiring as mayor, he was named executive director of the Independent Cities Association, a nonprofit group of 32 cities in Southern California. As a young man, Kelly McDowell traveled the world to such far-off places as Sri Lanka, the Seychelles, Italy, and closer to home, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where he worked as a wrangler. After attending Deerfield Academy in Massachusetts, he went off to Stanford University to study economics and political science, graduating in 1974. He then attended law school at UCLA, where he earned his Juris Doctor with honors in 1977. More recently, Kelly moved to Gig Harbor, Washington with his wife and cat to be nearer his extended family. Kelly is survived by his devoted wife Lisa, his son Kelliston, his brothers Josh and Robert, his sister Tina, and his extended family members Christy Gibbons, Jackie Edelman, and his step-grandchild Tommy, Ruby, and Tanner, who always called him Papa. Funeral services will be private. I first met Kelly, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years ago when I joined Kiwanis. I looked up to Kelly as a mentor, always cared for this city greatly. Have fond memories of Kelly's really infectious, loud laugh. And that's pretty good, Mike, you got it. And of him riding his horse down Main Street, I think for the holiday parade as well. And he'll be missed, so if we could just take a moment of silence. Thank you. That concludes our meeting.